Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning for our city council meeting. We'll go ahead and, our city council work session, we'll go ahead and get started. Connie, could you please call the roll?
Cheatham.
Yes, here.
Third.
Here.
Mangum.
Here.
Mansfield. Marchand.
Here.
Nichols.
Here.
Platt.
Here. Thank you. We'll move to agenda item number 2 is Human Relations Advisory Board update. Representatives from Human Relations Advisory Committee, HRAC, will discuss the committee's goals and projects as well as council's policies and expectations.
Good morning. I'm Holly Harnsberger from Human Resources. I'm the staff liaison for the Human Relations Advisory Committee. We've got our vice chair, Shannon Cobes and Votniak. I pronounced it correctly. She'll go ahead and take over.
Pleasure to be here today. So one of our recurring things that we're always doing for our meetings is we have a priority of bringing in representatives from local community groups around town to be able to tell us what they're working on and to try to bring to us any concerns that they have. We want to create a space where they can feel like they could talk to us. And so, making sure that we're doing active community building through our meetings for that. So that's sort of our dominant function that we've had for this last year in terms of time spent, trying to liaise with various community groups. We have had discussions with concerns about the anti-LGBTQ protests that have happened in town and wanting to ensure equitable access for all members of our community to public spaces. We are able to provide an award, give an award each year from our committee. And so this year we've selected Joseph Krupper for our award in recognition of his work creating inclusive educational spaces and activities for children throughout our community. We do have a perpetual challenge when it comes to actually giving this award. This has been a thing that we've struggled with for years, that we want for an award that's coming from the HRAC, from the city, to carry some gravitas to it. We would like to be able to present it at sort of an existing event. We do not have any budget for awarding it. We do not have an event to award it at. So we're always struggling with identifying a community event that makes sense for us to be able to partner with, to be able to actually present this. And so that's a thing that we have been continuing actually for a few years to be able to identify the correct location for, and are always on the search. For another thing that we have as ongoing work right now is recognition that for as comprehensive as the Pocatello welcoming statement is, it does sort of have a couple of gaps in it for identifying various groups that may be marginalized within our community and trying to just make sure that we're closing that so that it doesn't feel like there's actually an intent for exclusion in there. So we're working on that right now to be able to do that and to be able to bring that forward.
Council.
Have you identified those groups that we feel are kind of excluded in that statement?
This is where I'm going to have to defer to Ann. Do you actually have the notes from that?
I did not bring that with me, but I do know gender identity was one of them. And we wanted to find some verbiage for, I believe it was capabilities, people with disabilities.
Yes, there was a discussion as to appropriate language to use to describe different abilities/disabilities and what would be the appropriate language choice for that one.
Thank you.
Councilman Nichols.
Is there anything the council can do to help your group?
If you guys know of an appropriate and relevant city event that we could be able to present our award at, there's nothing magic about the timing of when we do it, so we can align with absolutely any timing of the year. But we think that it would be appropriate if it was at something that was actually like some sort of city event.
Have you identified any of those that might be appropriate?
At this point, no.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically just tossing that out there. If you guys independently want to brainstorm, let us know if you have anything. I don't think this is something that would be like an official city council decision. Just you guys have a greater depth of knowledge of what the opportunities are. But past ideas have included things in association with Martin Luther King celebration. Concern is that we don't want to pull focus. Triangle neighborhood celebration, again, just trying to make sure whether or not we're actually within scope and appropriate focus for making sure it's clear that this is actually an award from the city.
Right.
Are there any
Mangum.
nonprofits or community groups that you can partner with to implement this during one of their events, or does it have to be like a city-specific focus?
So community groups would actually be things like the Triangle Neighborhood celebration. And so we've been very open to that. That's what we essentially have done in the past. We can do that. It's just, we want to make sure, again, it's clear that this is not an award being presented by that community group, but actually by the city.
Councilwoman Lyric?
I just wanted to thank you for the work that you do, and I also think that's an excellent choice for the award and very well deserved, and I'm glad that you're recognizing him and all his efforts in the community, so thank you for that.
I'll just add, he had an overwhelming number of nominations, extraordinarily well written to describe his merit.
That is great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for what you do there. That's it's a thankless thing, so thank you. We will move to agenda item 3, Golf Advisory Committee update. Representatives from the Golf Advisory Committee will discuss the committee's goals and projects, as well as council's policies and expectations.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Ann Butler, Parks and Recreation Director. I'm joined at the table with Bill Satterfield, the Chair of our Golf Advisory Committee, and Greg Albright from 4Golf. So I'm going to start with a few introductions, and then I'll turn some time over to them as well. So first, I'd like to thank Bill for being our chairman. We also have committee members, Danielle Mabey, Ginger Smith, Shane Warner, Dave McCloskey, DJ Mills, who's here, and Greg Albright. And then we also have some representatives from 4Golf, Gerald Myler and Brian Sprague. So Councilman Mangum, thank you also for being on our committee. So the Golf Advisory Board continues to work with our concessionaire and city staff to increase the appearance and condition of our golf courses, to make sure that that's a valuable asset to our community, as well as seeking strategies to improve play for our courses. So we'd also like to thank Mayor and Council for their support in the projects that we've had this past year and in the past. We're continually looking for capital resource opportunities to continue and increase play and improve the amenities that we have at the course. We do have a few projects that we've worked on this year. The first one is 4Golf and city staff work together to address the overflow problem at hole 17 at Riverside. 4Golf trenched and laid approximately 1,000 feet of underground pipe to divert the water from the settling pond near hole 14, and then ultimately into the Portneuf River. And then city staff assisted with dirt work and seeding of the impacted turf areas. The turf's coming in slow still. It got a little bit of a late start, but we anticipate this fall it'll take a good stand. A lot of money was saved just by us being able to do this together. We also have some updates on the electrical cart hookups. We had 4 outside cart pins and 2 enclosed pins. And then there were some other projects that we've kind of minimized as best we can to save some capital funds for a clubhouse at Riverside. So I'll go ahead and turn some time over to Greg to talk about the play report.
Hi, Mayor and City Council. I'm Greg Albright, General Manager of 4Golf, and I'll quickly read over some of our play reports. So 2022 total rounds played were 60,430. That compares to 2021 of 61,022 and 2020 of 60,353. Season pass holders account for approximately 62% of our total rounds played in 2021, and the ratio remained essentially the same in 2022 at 61.4% of rounds played by pass holders. In 2022, total passes were 776. In 2021, it was 795, and in 2020, it was 699. Tournament participation has been good. Our league play has been going okay. Through July 2023 year to date, total rounds are 39,315. That compares to 2022 of 35,464 rounds through July, and 2021 of 37,000 rounds through July. Through July 2023, year-to-date season passes are 740, compared to last year of 753 and 2021 of 630. Both courses also provide extensive support for our high school, as well as the women's golf team at Idaho State University at no cost for their practice and then match plays through the months of March through May. So the seasons have changed. The high school now changed their seasons, so now they have their season at the beginning, or actually in the fall rather than the spring. That helps alleviate some of the pressure that we had from the golfing community that wanted to get on the course, but also the golf teams wanting to get out on the golf course. So that's worked really well. Strategies to implement to increase play since the 2019 season. The expanded season pass categories of family and senior combo have been offered. To date, for the current 2023 season, 19 family passes and 56 senior combo passes have been purchased. In comparison to 2022, saw 15 family and 70 senior combo passes total for the season. Offered discounted play and cart use Monday through Thursday from 1 to 5. If you join our e-club is a means that I communicate with golfers through my website. If they will opt in with their email, then I can tell them of upcoming events, league play, things like that. Youth on Course is a heavily discounted youth rates. Youth on Course is something that's through the Idaho Golf Association. If the kids will purchase a card, I believe it's $25, that gives them rounds of golf at $5. And in our 20 years of running the golf courses, I've never seen so many junior golfers play as we had this year. And I think I attribute most of that to this Youth on Course. I mean, our season passes with juniors have kind of been pretty steady, but it seems like the majority of these kids have this Youth on Course, and it's an app that's on their phone. They just show it, they sign up, and the round of golf is $5. And then I take this list and I'll submit it to the Idaho Golf Association, and they will reimburse us $7 per those rounds. So to give you an example, in the month of July, both courses did roughly 500 rounds of kids play. Wow. So there's a lot of kids that are out there playing. That's good. That's encouraging. That is good. We also offer coupon booklets. We ran some televised ads during, I think it was the U.S. Open with Channel 6. And then we also have Twilight discounts. And the Twilight has been good in the sense that we've got a lot of newcomers to golf. They're wanting to, maybe they don't have the time to play all day. They want to kind of experience golf, but maybe in a limited basis. So they come out in the evening when they don't have time to play all 9 holes, but to play a few holes, but at least to get out on the golf course and see what it's like at a discounted rate. Okay, I'll turn the time over to Billy.
Yeah, so as we kind of talk about what our future needs of the golf course are, the one that's the most pressing is the Riverside Golf Course, the clubhouse there. Most of you are probably aware that it's an old converted barn. It was never built to be a clubhouse for a golf course or anything like that, and we've been fortunate to get by on it in its limited function as long as we have. There's a lot of restraints in the restaurant, a lot of issues, just overall condition and appearance and stuff like that don't match up with the quality of the golf course. And so in the immediate need, our request would be to get the funds to have a new Riverside Golf Course clubhouse built. We have drawings and stuff of a 3,600 square foot clubhouse that would have a full basement under it where we could do golf court storage. We would wire it to be able to charge the electric golf court carts and stuff under there. It would free up space. We got some space limitations out at Riverside already in the parking situations. Some of you are probably aware we leased some ground across the street to help with parking. And so by giving us some cart storage underneath the clubhouse, it frees up space for more cars and other things like that to be at the course itself. We've got an estimate of around $1.8 million to build this and to demolition the current clubhouse. There's some ups and downs of what that could be based on what you find there. There's always going to be some unknowns when you get into the construction world from a cost aspect and demolition aspect and things like that. For future type needs, we'll need to look at taking some trees and stuff out. It's the trees, especially out at Riverside, are really big. They take a lot of water, and they take maintenance, and we have issues in storms and stuff like that. The irrigation systems are both pretty old at this point. Highlands went in about 1987. Generally, you're going to get around 25 to 30 years out of your irrigation system, so we're beyond that lifetime already. And then Riverside's going to be coming up before too long. It's probably 10 years newer. We have some newer satellite stuff at Highland to help with reading turf conditions and things that are needed for determining where to run the lines and stuff, but Riverside stuff is older on its satellite. So both those things are things that are going to be needed over time. It's probably my best explanation for it is, if you own a home that you use as an income property or something like that, you got to put aside money to replace a roof and to replace a furnace and to do these different things. And we've basically been able to enjoy most of just the revenue that's come in without having to expend big dollars back into the course. And those days are here on us. To give you a little bit of history on the financial end of the golf courses, back in the day when the city ran them, it was a negative operation. It was lost money, and so they got to the point that they decided to lease the golf courses out to a concessionaire. And originally it was done for just $1 because the city would rather make $1 than lose money in that operation, and it was a win-win. And that has gone and done better and better and better with 4Golf operating it over the last 23 years. The city brings in, you can see on the numbers here, this last year they brought in $376,000. That's a portion of that is water, a portion of that is through the lease and the shared revenue and stuff. The lease and shared revenue portion is probably $200,000 of it, and the water's the rest. So over the time that 4Golf has operated the golf courses, the city has brought in between $7.5 and $8 million, probably about $4.5 million through leases and revenue sharing, and then another $3 to $3.5 million in water. As far as investment back, some of the things that we've done over the years, originally a season pass holder, when he came and played, he paid 50 cents to play, and that 50 cents was put into a capital improvement fund. And we changed that some years ago to just a flat fee when we sell a season pass of like $30 or $40. What it ends up being, as far as the city's concerned, or improvement aspect, is about $25,000 to $30,000 a year. And we've come back to the city in times where the city's matched that money. So we'll take that 25 or 30 plus the money the city's given us, and we've used $50,000 to $60,000 a year to do improvements just to get by on general maintenance. And what we're asking for at this point is some heavier investing so that we can set ourselves up to continue to receive the profits rather than timing wise. Couldn't be better. I mean, we've got a lot of play going on. Ever since COVID, the play's gone up significantly, probably 15-20%, and that has not tailored off, as you've seen from the numbers that Greg shared. Nationally, those numbers are up as well. There doesn't seem to be a fall off in that category, and so we have to prepare ourselves for that continued play and operation. And so the economic benefits to the city and to the area are really great. One of the things the clubhouse would do was give us a full-fledged restaurant to operate out of, which the south end of town is really low on. There's not a lot of options. You got the country club and you got the sand trap, and that's about it on that end of town. Our current operation doesn't allow us to do any frying or have any grease trap or anything like that. Kind of doing cold sandwiches, hot dogs, chips, and that's about it. And so there'll be additional revenue that putting the golf course in will generate for the city when all's said and done. And the golf courses end up being a really great attraction to the area. As some of you may know, I do real estate for a living, and I get feedback from people coming to this community all the time. And the quality of our outdoor recreation and the golf courses and the mountain biking, stuff like that, is something that is brought up consistently in the people that I deal with coming in. And so it's thing that we want to continue to take care of and improve and let it be a mark for our community, so.
Billy, we have a question. Brent?
So regarding the clubhouse, you anticipate there would be additional revenue generated by a new clubhouse?
Yes.
And have you calculated what that might be and how far that might go towards helping pay for a new facility?
I haven't calculated how much it might be. I don't know if Greg can share what the revenue on. The current clubhouses are so dated and stuff. I mean, there's a reason that all your franchise restaurants and stuff like that go through big renovations every 20, 25 years. In fact, they often require it of their franchisees and stuff like that because they know of the additional stuff it brings in. So I don't have an exact number on the food, and I don't know if you have any idea of what Highland does versus Riverside.
I don't know what kind of revenue that would bring in. I do know that we have lost some of our customers to Juniper Hills because of that amenities of a nice clubhouse. Because golfers, golf course to golf course, our golf courses are very comparable to Juniper Hills. But our amenities after that were lacking. And so golfers are wanting to take, maybe it's a business and they want to take clients and they want to play golf. But they want to go somewhere nice when they're done. They want to sit on a patio and socialize and that. And unfortunately, we don't have that atmosphere that they do out there. So I do know that we've lost some of our customers out there.
So I've got a couple more questions from Lurick, Cheatham, and then Mansfield.
First, I just wanted to comment that I'm really encouraged about the junior golfers, because in the past, we've talked about how to get young people interested and excited about golf, and it sounds like they are. So
That youth on courses really helped. The junior league program, which is younger kids, we had probably 90 kids at each course this year, but I was losing that older segment of kids, the high school kids and the junior high. So it's nice to see if it's this youth on course that's bringing them back.
Yeah.
It's working.
Yeah.
There's a lot of kids out there.
And then I also had a comment and just one other comment and a question, but just to be fair, the Blue Healer is also out there, so there is
There you
another
go.
place. Maybe doesn't have outdoor seating, but they do have good food. The question is for you, Billy. You said the estimate for the clubhouse is 1.8 million, and I was just wondering how recent that estimate is, because we've seen so many increases in construction costs. And I know you've given us an estimate before, and I remembered it being somewhere around the same amount. So is this a recent estimate, and do you feel that it's sufficient?
Those are estimates in the last week with just verbal stuff. I dropped off a entire full set of building plans to a builder last night who's going to go through and give us a more accurate number. I mean, once they know they're going to be doing a project, they will contact each of their subcontractors and get firm numbers of what each thing's going to cost. And so the estimates we have is talking to a couple building companies and giving an estimate based on the general specs, but those are all recent.
Oh, so it is really recent. Because I just want to make sure that we are being realistic, given how much everything costs these days. I mean, we've been talking about that in our budget process, just everything. I mean, concrete, asphalt, wood, whatever. It's all gone up so much that I want to make sure we're not setting that number too low.
Linda, I think that the numbers that were discussed, I think a year or two ago, it may have been 2 years ago that we discussed, it was like 750 to $1 million.
To $1 million, so yeah, so this is increased.
This is a definite increase.
Okay.
So,
And
Yeah,
I
that
got a
original-
similar bid than Bill did, so
Okay,
we're,
so we know we're in the
Within the
ballpark.
last 2 weeks,
Okay.
we've gotten a similar number, so.
Because I know we really need this, and I want to see it happen. I just want to make sure that we got the right numbers.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Council President Cheatham.
I want to address Mr. Satterfield. I follow your adventures online. You're probably the most passionate worldwide golfer that I know anywhere. Is this what we need? Is this enough for the next 25 years for the Riverside Golf Course? That's my concern. Do we go spend $1.8 million now and in 3 years wish we'd have spent $2 million because we missed an amenity or a feature or a size? Are we doing enough to plan for the future?
Right. I mean, one discussion's been, should we take it up to a second story to give ourselves a little more size or something like that? I think ultimately, at the Riverside location, it would be sufficient. That golf course is shorter, less parking, more land constraints. In the long term, Highland would probably be the course that would get the larger clubhouse that would be able to have more operations and stuff out of there. One possible idea is if we did a second story, say on the Riverside Golf Course, would be then it would be set up to handle weddings and events and things like that that are popular to do at golf courses and stuff like that across the country. And so, which is great. Again, I just come back to a little bit that we're a little tied land-wise on how aggressive we can get with that size. And so, my opinion, I'd say it's sufficient at this point with the idea of down the road that Highland would be the larger setup there.
If I may
You
follow up,
you could probably, and of course, but you could probably build it now like this, but make sure your walls and you have the stability to go up in 25 years.
That was my follow-up question. Should we do that? Should we plan this so a second story could be added?
When I dropped off the plans of the builder last night, I told him to plan it that way, that could be a possibility of doing a second story on top, and that we'd want the outside walls and the foundations and stuff like that set to handle a second story if we wanted to go that direction.
Are there amenities that we're missing that you see in your worldwide travels at golf courses?
Yeah, it's all relative. And we got to kind of know who we are. I mean, I go see things that blows my mind, you know. I was recently in Denver and played at Cherry Hills Country Club, which has hosted the U.S. Open multiple times. It's hosting the U.S. Amateur next week. They just went through a $75 million clubhouse renovation, and they have 100,000 square feet. Yeah, it was awesome. You know, is that what we're going to do at Riverside? Nope. You know, but I think the biggest lacking that we have now is the dining setup. We're really constrained in the kitchen of what we can offer, and any dining tables. We only got a couple tables inside there, and then a small patio, and the pro shop space isn't that big. You know, another income generator is being able to sell your merchandise and equipment and things like that, and we're pretty limited on how much stuff we can stock and hold in there. For our municipal setup of Pocatello, Idaho, I think this would be all right.
Is it comparable to other cities around us in terms of offering as good a facility as other communities do?
This would. Our current operation, we're easily the weakest as you compare ourselves to Blackfoot and Idaho Falls and the Twin Falls courses and stuff like that. We are pretty far behind in all that. This would get us right up to snuff from a size aspect, and then of course better from a newness aspect, you know.
Thank you.
Josh?
What is the estimated cost of replacing irrigation systems at both courses?
We've been chatting about that a little bit. We haven't got a firm figure. I'm going to say it's not less than $1 million to do all that. We have not gone and got the firm figures on it, but based on what I've seen going other places, Pinecrest up in Idaho Falls just recently went and did it. I know the pro up there. I know, obviously Greg knows the pro up there. Thought about calling and talking to them and seeing what their costs were, so we had an idea. But if I'm guessing, somewhere in the 1 to 2 range, unless you got some other thought on that.
That would be my guess.
I'll start. I do real fast. I appreciate you being willing to throw some ballpark numbers, and I promise I won't hold you to them. But so often we hear, oh, we're going to have to go get quotes, and we don't really have answers. So just having something to conceptualize is helpful. So thank you for making that speculation for me. I guess then my question and concern in terms of priorities, I worry that we approve the idea of this clubhouse. We get a clubhouse built. We put 1.8 million in. The concessionaire has said, according to this proposal, that the concessionaire would pay an additional $10,000 a year on the agreement with the creation of the new clubhouse. That's the final bullet point in your proposal.
That was a item of discussion through it.
Sure. So if that's the case, I see that as that's 5% of our revenue. So let's say our revenue goes up by 5% with this new clubhouse. But then in 1 year, we get this built, and then in 2024, we're back at budget session, and we get a conversation of, well, actually, it's going to be another 1.5 for a sprinkler system now. And if we don't do that, then it's just going to be brown and we won't be able to play. So I guess in terms of priorities, where do these two rank? Because in my mind, I see the irrigation system as being a must do in order for the course to function. So
We're getting by well enough. We talked to Brian Sprague, who's the course superintendent, about this again yesterday. And with the upgrades that have been done, the satellite systems has helped us nurse that system along longer to the point that all the committee for golf, everyone feels the first priority would be to get the clubhouse done, that we can get by on the irrigation for now. The courses are in good shape. They're comparable to what we see at other courses in eastern Idaho. We have a little more maintenance dealing with sprinkler heads and other things like that than we'd like to have, but we have been fortunate not to deal with a lot of big pipe bursting and things like that, which would be the big concern. And so, yeah, the priority continues to be the clubhouse with irrigation in the future.
Okay, I got Scott and then Brent again.
Well, I've seen both the clubhouses, and there's no doubt that Riverside is on its last leg. That clubhouse is done. It's tough. The people that golf there enjoy it. And I think also that our courses are, in comparison to others, not that I've visited tons of others, they match up well. They're very well maintained. They're very well taken care of, and that becomes a point of pride. So I appreciate that, because that's what people look at the city. They don't care who's running the golf course. They just want to know what it looks like and really what it costs them to play and how they do that. So I think that the clubhouse is a priority. I've said that. I've also said that we lack in maintenance within the city across the board, whether that's golf or buildings or whatever. We have to find a way to maintain these things and have that money, so we're not worried every budget season about, well, the sprinklers are bad and we have to change them. So we have to start looking as a group to the future of, here's our plan. 2028, the sprinklers, we're going to change them. Where do we find that money? How do we bank that money? And how do we get there? Can we get there and afford it? So that would be the things I would push to you, is that, and with Ann's help, and I think she's already done it, she's got that on board, she's starting to track all that stuff, is how do we bank that money so that we're not having these $1 million battles every year at budget time, right? Because it becomes the same thing as pickleball courts. They want them. Well, not everybody plays pickleball. Not everybody golfs, right? So the non-golfers are looking at, where are my tax dollars going and why are they going to the golf course? So we have to find those ways. I don't know how to do it exactly, and I also think that, if we could find donors or people that want to put their name on the wall, sometimes that helps. They want to come in and make a donation to build a new clubhouse, to have their business name hung somewhere. Maybe that helps us a little bit. Maybe that gets a little bit of the money off the table for the construction, and then we could put that money into irrigation later.
I think the great thing about the golf courses is that we carry our own weight.
Right.
And that no one else can claim that in their parks department. And if you just took just the portion that the city takes from the lease and shared revenue aspect of over $200,000 a year, you're replacing a whole irrigation system in 5-6 years if we just set aside that money. And all the other departments, pickleball, and I like playing pickleball and everything like that, it's never going to carry its own weight.
Right. There's
and
no
stuff.
charge. I get that.
And so, our proposal would be that of this revenue that comes in, to be setting aside $150,000 a year toward and have that set so that we can do these improvements, and that we don't have to go get it elsewhere because we're already generating it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councilmember Nichols?
So proposed cost 1.8 million, 3,600 square feet. That's $500 a square foot. That seems pretty pricey. Is my perception correct there? Or?
Yeah, I mean, you got, again, anyone who goes diving into a construction project, like, for example, with golf course construction in general, I've got quite a bit of exposure in dealing with that and stuff like that. No architect or anything like that's gonna give you a figure of what's gonna cost to pay because there's too many unknowns. So if asked to give a number, the number's gonna be on the high end because nobody likes the surprise the other way, you know? And so I think they're realistic with some certain amount of padding for some unknowns that we gotta get through.
So would that number include things like the kitchen equipment and furnishings and everything to sort of get it turnkey and operational then? Or is that just a hard, bare construction number?
It's mostly a construction number. You know, there's certain things are gonna be included in an operation from bathrooms as far as faucets and fixtures and things like that, and kitchen stuff like that. You know, does it include a hood or something like that? No, not necessarily, you know, because that can range a little bit depending on what kind of operation you want to run. Be some basic kitchen things, but maybe not the final couple
I
things.
think it would also include a little bit of landscaping and some potential parking in that number. The only X factor I consider in the quotes that I had seen is asbestos. So if the existing building has asbestos, then that might increase the demolition costs a little bit. So that to me is the X factor in the equation, but I still think the number's pretty solid.
All right, great, thank you.
But this does, it sounds like this probably includes the rental of a trailer for a clubhouse through the duration of the construction, plus demolition and things like that, and so.
Yeah, that'd be the assumptions that we bring a trailer in to operate out of. Because I think that the time frame probably realistically is somewhere in the 18-month range to do construction. In a perfect world, we'd love to start construction at the end of October as the golf season's ending, get the first 6 months done while we're, you know, in bad weather, operate out of a trailer for an entire season, and then have it all wrapped up by the following spring. That'd be ideal. But, you know, it depends on when budgetary things get approved and when we can get things started, you know. It may be something we have to start in the spring, get through a season and a half of getting by in the trailer, basically.
So if we drive by Riverside and we see Greg and Gerald out there pushing the building over and stuff at the end of October, we know we're in trouble. Rick, you had something, and then Linda.
I do, for Greg, I was writing the statistics as you were giving those on the golf play in the past year. But the one I didn't hear or didn't write down, how much of the play is divided between the two courses we have? Is more play at Highland or Riverside or?
Good question. I think we have more people, if they're gonna walk, would prefer to walk at Riverside. But as far as play, they're pretty comparable.
For what it's worth, I remember talking to Charles about this when he was right. He said Riverside got about 15% more play because it's more walkable and stuff. And so the course that gets the more play also has the weakest amenities, which is unfortunate.
I think that course, Riverside, is more visible as you drive down Bannock Highway. You can see the course in the busy parking lot. Where Highland is more tucked away, unless you live on the course, you really don't see what's going on up there.
It's a nicer course because it's flat for sure. The problem is, I agree, we got to remove trees. I've done my best to get rid of a bunch of those trees, but they don't have, yeah, one stroke at a time.
Chipping away?
That's right. I got Linda and then Mangum.
God, it keeps going in and out of my mind. I wanted to go back to the idea of, you know, a major donor and a name on the building and everything. And I know there was work done on that in the past, and it sort of stalled or and didn't end up happening. Are you continuing to do that and to look at that? Are there any potential options on the horizon, or where does that stand?
I know that my predecessor hit up a lot of different places. I will say the easiest way to also find a partnership is kind of in the same boat as you guys are in. If one commits to a certain amount, then it's easier to get the other side of that. And so it's kind of a balancing act. We haven't been able to find that because we haven't known if we had a commitment on the other side. And so that might help us if you guys were interested in committing a certain dollar amount to really go after some of
To get it
those.
started.
Okay, Mangum.
Yesterday, in speaking with Brian, the course superintendent about the water line issues. He had mentioned at one point there was someone who came in and did like an inspection on the water lines and said if we had these certain pieces that it would help to relieve some of these issues from the water pressure that's coming in because there's too much pressure at times, or the leaks or the pipes or all these issues. And so they said if we were to add these certain things or to do these certain things, that it would maintain it and give it a little more longevity. Is that report still, do we still have that report, or?
I'm aware of a report, and truthfully, I think both sides have a little bit different version, and I'm trying to find what I think the middle ground is between the two, and I don't have the answer yet, but I've been talking with the mayor and trying to figure out kind of the best approach. We do have some water hammer issues down at Riverside. It's a constant battle. Of course, we don't know the magic number of what causes it when it does happen. It's something we have to work on. And it's truthfully, it's a long-term issue we've had over 20 years.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. And we will move to agenda item 4 is the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee update. Representatives from the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee will discuss the committee's goals and projects as well as council's policies and expectations.
All right, well, again, Ann Butler, Parks and Recreation Director. I'm joined at the table with David Pacioretty, our Chair of our Parks and Recreation Board, and I'm going to let him do his thing.
Okay, thank you, Ann. Good morning, Mayor and council members. Appreciate the time to give a briefing of some of the activities. As you know, we had a transition occur this third quarter with the outgoing director, and then we had an interim director at the time. I believe that was the mayor, and then we're happy to have Ann on board as the permanent Park and Rec director. A couple of things. We continue to have a strong committee membership and participation that covers a lot of the aspects of some of the outgoing recreation in our community, including golf, but it also includes District 25. It includes other folks with interest in the area on other aspects like youth sports, which has shared with us is he feels is underrepresented in the community in terms of some amenities for youth like a skateboard park, which has been on the table for some time but has not yet moved. So you might see some of that being come forward in the future. General information. So because of the transition, we did not meet in April. We did not have a meeting, but we convened when Ann was on board to meet Ann in June. We also saw an outgoing of our recreation superintendent, Marin, who did an outstanding job at our Nordic Center this year. I don't know if anyone uses that area, and you got to have a winter like we had, but when you had a team like Marin did, it really noticeable how well everything was managed up there, how clean things were, and how many visitors used that facility this last year. Again, the winter definitely helped, but with the addition of this equipment called the Piston Bully by Idaho Central Credit Union, it was amazing how well that really improved the condition of the trails. As Mayor knows, the Potato Cup, which is a Nordic ski race event, seen as probably the most attendance it's had since its inception. And again, people coming from around the area outside of the state just were amazed at what the city Nordic Center can provide. So that was something I know that was pretty rewarding. Marin moved on to ISU outdoor rec program, so that's a big plus for ISU. I was introduced along with the committee the other day, and introduced the new replacement, Carrie Rhodes. And I understand her background's from Colorado, so she would know stacked parking lots pretty well when it comes to trailheads and issues with that and mountain biking. So I think that's going to be a really good asset to the program. Of course, you have this in front of you about when the meetings are, and
You don't have that?
oh, you don't have that?
Nope.
But do you know we meet every first Thursday of the month, every 2 months? Other thing I want to mention is to the staff of the is special thanks to Kristen, who really keeps the coordination together efforts, timely notices of our meetings, and also captures our notes and really helps in participating. So thanks, Kristen, for your help. Partnership opportunities. Maybe you've noticed the new addition to some of our replacement of our signage for our parks. If you look at the shady side, that was something that during my tenure, which is not very long on the committee, it was one project that was vetted all the way through, and actually now we get to see the results of it. We have some upgraded, fresh signs. There's more to come in some of the parks, but hopefully you noticed the ones that were replacing the old brown ones out, and we're getting a new, fresh idea. So I think that was a really good effort on the previous director carrying forward. And I might mention also, and Ann commented too, that previous director really got things kind of teed up for the outside funding sources to put their brand on something. So I think there's some traction going to be going into that Ann's really aware of and she's going to take on, which we're real pleased to see. The partnership opportunities with the goal of identifying park system capital projects and improvements and pursuing partnerships with local businesses. So this goes into that whole direction of trying to say, is there, just like the Lookout Point did down in the town square, ICC, with the Piston Bully up at the Nordic Center. I think there's some big dollars out there by some of these outfits that can really be added value. So we feel we got some momentum going in successful partnership. I mentioned a couple of them already. Connections Credit Union did the outstanding Zoo Idaho entrance building. That's a real big eye catcher for definitely the people coming in for the vacation, coming in for the summertime visiting family, going to the Ross Aquatic Center. Yes, there's no slide, but it's on the way. We know that, and that's moving forward. But just to see that new entrance to the zoo, it's a really an eye-catching. I think it's really a good start to keep going with that program. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, and just some future projects, the Idaho Central splash pad at OK Ward Park. I know we're a little bit behind on that project, but we're getting it up to speed and expect construction in the spring. And then also the Portneuf Health Trust, you guys are aware of the contract for the Community Recreation Center renovations. And so that will be a very good project and a very nice, clean update to that facility.
And it's used very frequently, okay. I mentioned about the new park sign design system goal, creating that fresh, attractive, inviting. And I think, again, there's many more we can add new signs to really bring it in on that. We saw, as we see around the community, maybe it was a culmination of previous years' dryness and drought and whatnot, but we're seeing quite a die-off on many of the trees in some of these parks, particularly the older age class of the spruce trees. And we're seeing that Brett and his staff, as they can, definitely look to take out anything hazardous, but we are seeing more of that die-off, and I've seen it around the community as well. So where there's a chance, Brett and his staff will probably put in a new tree, obviously give another life to it. I guess we all hear about this approval of ARPA funding. That's kind of a time-sensitive funding package, I understand. It has to be used by the end of, I believe, committed by the end of this year. So everyone in their different departments probably went to put their wish list together. And Ann has you have
We have several projects,
yeah, in your department, right?
Yep.
And you have one that's starting already coming up, right?
Yeah, we have several that are kind of in process right now, but I know the biggest one that the committee's been spending a lot of time talking about is pickleball. So we are on pace and we're about to get under construction there.
And I might add, I just noticed that kind of came in probably in the last minute, and I know you members of the council were probably met in sessions or on the streets with fellow advocates of that program, and to a point where you got the money, okay, here's a pickleball court. I'll just share with you that I know there's a process that sometimes when you get that quite attention, I wouldn't say maybe pressure, but I thought the process was, well, go in front of the advisory committee, make a presentation, and then maybe we can table it to then take to the council. I think that issue did not happen personally, because we had some other things up that could have been really discussed. That would have been the youth skateboard park. And in our meeting we had for the month of August, and the action item was to approve the amendment to the Ross Park plan to add this pickleball court. So it was kind of approved after the fact, but none of us were briefed that that really was going to be all of a sudden last minute item. So it's just a note. Hopefully in the future we'll have that back on track, where if a pro group for a recreational use keeps going to you folks, have them come to the board, give a presentation, like they did for the disc golf. They did a great job, and then we all voted. But I think something kind of hiccuped along the line there. Any questions?
So I got Mangum and then Cheatham. We'll go from there.
The updates for the recreation center, when is that supposed to start?
So we met with the Portneuf Health Trust again last week, and I know that their construction outfit that is going to do the work has had some delays. I was anticipating that that would already be started by now, and I'm guessing it's not going to happen till the spring at this point. But I'll get a final calendar here probably in the next month or so.
They want it to be running already, but just haven't been able to, so.
Yep.
Cheatham?
A year or so ago, we made a commitment for a new park in the northeast part of town with Ryan Satterfield.
Yep.
What's the status of that project?
So, Legacy Park.
Oh,
So I spoke with Merrill a couple weeks ago about it, and he's anticipating the final plat will be coming to you guys at that point. That final plat is what actually puts us on the clock to continue and finish some of the things we've committed to, which would be irrigation and sod in the initial phase, and then there's a phase for parking and bathrooms also. Jerry Cuio, our irrigation fellow employee, has been working on a plan for that. We've gotten some initial estimates on seeding that area. We can do some of the work in-house, but we may be coming back to talk to you about what things we can't get done and what we might need some help with. I know no money was committed at the time you guys had agreed to that, so we probably need to continue that discussion as soon as that final plat is headed to you.
Is there a plan for amenities at that park of any kind?
The plan I saw shows a plan for bathrooms and some slide area, like sledding type areas, and then there's some water retention areas. There's a playground area, but we haven't dug deep into that, what that might look like at this point.
Thank you.
Corey?
Is there any talk or ideas about any other new parks being created within our city?
Other than Legacy Park, no. And truthfully, I would really like to put money into the inventory we already have. We're behind in some places. We haven't put a new playground in 20 years.
infrastructure.
We really need to invest in the infrastructure of the existing amenities that we have. I know Scott's been talking a lot about that, and he's right.
Do we have a list of projects for each one of these parks? I know you said you're compiling some different ideas and thoughts, but do we have a list for each one that can be looked at, park for park, or?
A list of amenities that we'd like to know, but we do have some ideas and some plans on things that I'd like to hit some community sponsors about with how we kind of realign and recreate those park areas for us. Really get a fresh look and incorporate things that kids today enjoy, maybe that they didn't 30 years ago. I just don't want to give away too many of the ideas yet because I haven't spoken to those partners yet.
Council member, your council president, Cheatham.
Yeah.
A couple of meetings ago, the senior center came to us with a proposal to redo that green area in front of their building, and that stirred up quite a bit of controversy over Bonneville Park. Is that plan under your department, or will that fall under some other department of the city? And any idea where we're going there?
So I know the biggest heartburn has been around the landscaped area at the senior center. It's hard because people see the landscaped area that is maintained by the Parks Department as part of the park. I know we're seeing the park as what's on the corner there, the 3 parcels there that take into account that. And I've reviewed the plans with Brett, and we've talked about what maintenance that would look like. And we're okay either way, from a maintenance perspective, if that's to be parking lot or if that's to be stay what it is, the green space. We're content to do either one, but I know that there's a lot of history there that I may not be aware of. But we're okay to, on it from a maintenance perspective, to go either direction on that.
So I have additional information I can continue on and then take more questions. Is that want to continue?
Go ahead.
Okay. As I mentioned earlier, I do want to back up a bit. In the time I've been on board with the advisory committee, representation by the city council by Scott Marchant was really great. It's probably, in my time on the committee, the most presence we've seen of council member. And Scott, so kudos, thanks for your participation. And I think it had results just on some of the hiring that Brett could do with seasonals and some of the pay wages. So I want to comment to the council that we appreciate having that presence. I know it's an hour out of your schedule, but it's still, you engage with the advisory committee, members of the community, and it's noticed. So thank you. I'll go back to some other bullet points. Again, the board, advisory board committee has expressed and continued interest in construction and looking at possibly partnership in a youth or a new skate park in the community. The current one that's in in Ross Park is not designed correctly for the way I understand it, the surface, but is also frequently used all day into their evening. And they talked about perhaps looking at somewhat more central in another park area. That's to come later on. Ann briefed us on some of the budget expenditures and review reports. We seem to be pretty much coming into the fourth quarter, pretty much right on towards our expenditures. And then some of the other things about, again, trying to keep higher the seasonals with the pay scale, given the private sector is always going to be a challenge. So I think Brett did finally get enough of his staff up on board with that. Upcoming year, we want to get this final design of the Ross Park map to the city council for potential adoption consideration. It's been going around and around and around, and we had kind of a setback and COVID this, and then outgoing director had things really teed up. Anyway, I think a lot of effort's gone into that we want to continue to see that move forward. The other thing that you mentioned, Ann mentioned, this ICCU splash pad. Also going on is Brooklands playground resurfacing, right? That's ongoing now. And then the Ross Park slide, which included a donation from outgoing a member. So in kind of summary, just want to thank the city council for their interest and participation and giving support for the Department of Park and Recreation. The community has grown as we know it. The use on I know the public lands is really tremendously threefold, but it's also occurred in all your amenities in town. Used pretty heavy. So thank you on all of that, and I appreciate Ann on board and having her participation and interest in everything. So thank you with that. Take any more questions?
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.
Then we'll move to agenda item 5 is personal
Could we take a quick break?
We are going to take a quick break. And
Thank you.
I don't know what a quick break looks like, 10, 15 minutes, hopefully 5, but we'll say 5 and see what it looks like when we get back here.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us after the break. We'll We'll go ahead and get started with agenda item number 5 is Personnel Policy Handbook Updates. Human Resources Department staff will be in attendance to present proposed updates to the Personnel Policy Handbook. I didn't realize it was going to be all of
It's pretty
the
close,
HR.
almost all of HR is here. You've seen 2/3 of us today. Heather Buchanan, Human Resources Director. So sadly, you have seen the handbook in a couple work sessions, and you will see me again in September. In September, I'm hopefully bringing finance with me, who will go over their policies. I've attached a red line of the handbook. I know there are formatting errors, Rick. It takes hours to format the final document to make sure everything's laid out, and I don't do that in the middle of a draft process. I was just going to scroll through the changes that I'm going to talk about today, which are highlighted in yellow. It doesn't look very yellow up there, but I promise it is. The items in blue we have previously discussed, and then there's a couple items that are blacked out because we are still working on them. One of those is a complete rewrite to the employee discipline section, and part of the changes you're seeing today are tied to that, and I'll make sure I let you know what those are as we get to them. All right, so our first change that has any substance is currently the handbook says we will print a personnel policy for the employees. Well, they're 100 pages long. In the effort to reduce our paper output, which HR is already very poor at, we're moving this to it's available digitally. This is available on the internet, on the external website, and then it will also be loaded in Employee Navigator. Hopefully you're logging in for open enrollment. You will be able to certify the handbook electronically going forward once this is adopted.
Sorry.
Okay, we've already got one. Yes.
So I see on that last line, it says employees may be able to view, copy, or print.
That's what we're striking.
Is there a reason why they're not able to print their own copy?
They can print their own copy. HR is just not going to print them and distribute.
Okay, because the way I read this, it doesn't read that HR is going to copy and distribute it. It reads that the employee can do it themselves.
They can print any of our documents available on the website. That's all job descriptions. Almost everything HR does is available and printable by the public and employees. So some policy, as I was talking about with the council president, there'll be a note of when it was updated or where I'm pulling the policy from. Usually the only thing you're going to see is ICRIMP. If it's an ICRIMP policy, we bring it to you if you would like to include it in our handbook or not. I can't tell you the background on those. I can just tell you that it's in the edition of the handbook that they currently have available for their members. The first update that we're looking at that is not a big change, however, it is a change I would like to note, is under conflict of interest. Jared helped me do the research on this to item C. We would like to add the language that an existing employee is also eligible for promotion, step movements, and reclassifications. This is applicable to employees who work at the city, who then end up with a council member who they are related to. State statute allows this, and we're just adopting that language, so we're mimicking what's allowed at the state level. It's already the current practice, it's just actually writing it in here for clarity.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
While we're there, one of my questions has to do with lines 69 to 72.
Okay.
Why did we delete legal and workers' compensation?
Because of our current structure. Our current risk manager has family working at the city, and we have attorneys who have family working at the city. So there's no way for me to specifically limit those, even though in practice, Jared is making sure they're not assigned cases that touch members of their family. Their department is still active in what that employee could be encountering.
Okay.
Oh, we're like 3 lines in and you guys are already making me sweat. Okay, so if we move to line 184, we're adding language. We would like to add language for about First Amendment rights. This is an ICRIP recommended addition to the handbook. It is copied verbatim from what they currently offer.
Also, reasonable prediction of disruption is also an ICRIMP recommendation, along with evaluation and action.
Okay, Heather. 3 for 3. Councilmember Nichols.
So the reasonable prediction of disruption by ICRIMP,
Yes.
can we actually do this? I mean, maybe that's a question for Jared. Legally, this is, yeah, just,
So I can tell you, I do not like this section of ICRIMP policy, and I don't think it's something we should include in our handbook. I am comfortable if you choose to include it, because we do have a strong city attorney that can keep us on the straight and narrow in this area. But I would have to defer to him on how cumbersome it could be.
why would ICRIMP want this? It would seem to be a liability, not a,
When ICRIMP writes the policy manual, ignore the ICRIMP board member in the middle of you, they have to look at all angles, and that includes counties and small jurisdictions. A lot of counties would run into this problem. If you're running for an assessor, the person underneath you, your subordinate could be running directly against you. In a strong mayor form of government, or even with city council, it doesn't have the same impact that it does on a county level. I do not think it is as applicable at a city as it would be a county level. This is one I would actually, even against ICRIMP's recommendation, not include.
all right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
While we're there, line 218 talks about the elected officials should consult with legal counsel for the city in determining whether there exists a reasonable prediction of disruption and the appropriate employment action to take. What if they don't?
Well, that is one of the more challenging parts of working for a city. We have no control over U7. It is asked, but ultimately, at the end of the day, the mayor is kind of outside of our operations, and the fact that they get to make decisions because they are the leader of the city. They do not have to meet with council. They can make a decision. We've all seen circumstances in other jurisdictions where then they have to correct those later on. Usually they're very public and very expensive. It causes a liability for us.
Well, I guess my question is, if we put this in policy and then it isn't followed, what are the implications? Again, perhaps that's a legal question.
Just for you, Jared.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Jared Johnson, City Attorney. Specifically to the line that you asked about Council President Cheatham, there are no repercussions. It's a recommendation that that's the path that should be followed, but there's no repercussions because, one, you don't have to listen to me, and two, you're elected officials, and you're not necessarily subject to the personnel policy. So those are really tough answers to give, but that is the truth of the matter. I'm with Heather. I think this is a much more relevant policy at a county level. You have you have department heads that are elected officials at a county level. I'm not sure it's a perfect fit for a city. In most ways, it really only affects the mayor's position because the mayor is the one that has personnel influence and hiring and firing type of authority. You as a council member individually don't have that same authority. So this is one for your consideration. It certainly wouldn't break my heart if you decided not to adopt this policy, but if you did, it could be enforced and we could follow it, and we would hope for the best results as we go forward. There are times when it would apply to a city, but not all the time, and not near as much as a county.
One more. When we talk about legal implications, does that apply to the city as well as to the elected official who doesn't follow the policy? Is there a differentiation in how that could be enforced?
I think I understand what your question is, and basically, yes, if there's a policy in place and any official within the city doesn't follow that policy, there could be legal implications for the official and for the city itself. So when we have a suit brought against us, it usually names individuals in their official capacity and the city as a whole, and we defend both.
Is this an ICRIMP ask for?
It is part of the handbook that they give out for us to use in building ours.
If we don't include it, does that reduce our potential coverage by ICRIMP?
No. This has been in there for several years, and I've just avoided bringing it.
They have a model policy for all of their clients, and certain clients use certain parts of it based on their specific circumstances, and there's, at least my understanding is, there's absolutely no penalty, premium-wise or other, for not just wholeheartedly adopting the entire thing. You take what's applicable to your situation.
They have this policy book because there are some entities that don't have a policy book. They don't have an expert in the field to give them anything. And so this gives them an opportunity to at least adopt something. So, and then Brent has another question.
So in the past, have we had any issues where this might have been applicable or helpful?
Yes.
In my we're just rounding past 7 years, starting on 8, we've had employees run for either council seats or mayor seats. I don't think that there's been a conflict that it would have rose to this level.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The one question I guess I'd ask for you two in your consideration, when I look at this, I don't really see, because your answer to me is, well, it probably isn't going to apply most times, right? It's not super applicable, but in a world where you do have that conflict, and my understanding is that this gives a little bit of extra protection in terms of disciplinary actions or administrative leave requests in the case that it is a high-profile, very public and contentious issues that are created within the city because of it. Is there any harm to including it?
Want to go first?
No, you can go ahead. Jack.
No, I don't think there is any harm to including it because I think that you're right. There could be a circumstance in the distant or near future where this becomes helpful to the city this is a policy designed to let the city continue to operate in spite of political strife and turmoil that might occur. And so I hope that it never becomes an issue and that we don't have to implement something like this. But if that became a situation where it was at least looked at, this gives us some guidance to be able to do that. Now, if we didn't adopt it, it's still, there was a question earlier whether this is legal. Yes, it absolutely is, because the operations of the city is first and foremost, even above everybody's right to run for office. And it's not saying they can't run for office. They're saying if you choose to run for office, this is a potential ramification of that choice. And so from what I understand, I dealt with it much more when I was at the county because of the number of elected officials they have. But from what I understand, it's been tried and tested and found to be constitutional and legal. Now, that doesn't mean somebody couldn't challenge it. But I guess to shorten my very long answer to your quick question, yes, it might become useful to have in existence at certain times.
Great.
Linda?
I just want to follow up on Josh's question because I was thinking along the same lines, but is that the reason you're bringing it forward now? The fact that we haven't done this before, because most of the time, 99% of the time, it doesn't apply. But are you bringing it forward in case of that, potential where it might apply? Is that why we're now putting this in here?
So I think one of the reasons is I can read the room. I understand this council is very open to ideas that might not become an issue, but you still would like to head them off earlier. It's hard to know when to introduce things like this because it feels negative and it's not. There is nothing negative about it. But if you're an employee reading it, the last thing we want to do is say, make them feel like they can't run for something. And that is not the intent. And that is why I have not brought it. Right now, this is not a mayoral election year, so I felt it was a good time because that's usually where the conflict would exist. It would be able for us to put it in place and educate employees so they would be comfortable with it before it could become a player. I need some bandwidth to help educate people about the policy itself.
Okay.
Quick one follow-up question. I actually, when I read line 218 that Rick highlighted about the elected officials should consult with legal counsel for the city, is there anywhere in there that recommends that the employee consult with legal counsel for the potential disruption? Is that something that would be appropriate to include in there?
Your legal counsel.
I'm aware. It's not in there, but the question is it appropriate they're always welcome to come and have that consultation with legal or with HR because what they're asking is a personnel policy question.
Sure.
And the ramifications, again, of that choice to run for that particular office. So, if council wanted it added, we could certainly find a way to encourage employees to seek guidance if they're considering that decision, but no, it's not there now.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Scott.
I just have a comment. I kind of like this, to be quite honest with you, because when a city employee does run, it creates disruption within your department. No matter how you look at it, it happens one way or another. And it's, when you're trying to run that department and do those things, it's touchy. It becomes touchy. For a supervisor, it's tough. And what is politicking versus when do you work and when do you politic, and are you doing it at the same time? And are you doing it on city time and those things? So when I look at this, I just think I think it's good business. I think it's smart to look to the future and say, we don't want to have those problems. So how can we avoid those problems? So as much of a big policy guy as I've always been, this is one that when I look at it, I go, I see its potential in the future.
Josh, you had a follow-up.
Yeah. Let's say I decide, I'm a city employee who decides to run, and I want to consult with HR and legal before I do so, because I don't want my job to be in any risk if I do choose to run. Is there any protection of confidentiality for that employee if they come discuss that with you?
No. Only because employees, from the attorney-client privilege standpoint, employees are not my clients
The
as
city is.
individual employees. If they shared something with me that created a privilege for the city, I couldn't share it outside of the city. But
Sure.
for that employee versus that employee supervisor, that confidentiality wouldn't necessarily, I hate to say that as a blanket, wouldn't necessarily. There could be circumstances or specific shared, but no, not typically. And I'll let Heather speak for the HR perspective.
I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a priest.
Well, but I might add, though, when an employee comes and speaks to HR or legal, they don't come running to any of the elected officials and say that. They're not, it's not like they're running to tell everybody what's going on and stuff. They keep everything fairly confidential anyway, and so I can't think of one time I've had either one of them come in my office and say, oh, this employee just said this, or this employee did that, or, they work through a process that is there, so.
Of course, and we're making these considerations not of the people sitting in this room, but of the people in 20 or 30 years, right? And maybe this will be updated by then as well. But I don't know who's going to be sitting in I'll be really frank, your 3 chairs in 10 years. And if you guys are going to be here. And so I have to ask the question, if we were to put a recommendation for employees to go to HR, would that HR person turn around and say, ooh, I better let the mayor know?
No, I would let Jared know.
Oh,
It's so we could hit it off.
would the HR in the legal department go, well, I'm going to actually just go let the mayor know that, so-and-so is going to run against him, right? That's why I'm a little hesitant on that initial
I think it's an
recommendation.
overstep for us to say employees should meet with HR or legal.
Okay.
And I guess to clarify my previous answer, the confidentiality is a right that I couldn't, if I wanted to, go share that information because of attorney-client confidentiality. Now, to the mayor's point, I'm certainly able to, I don't want to use the term keep a secret, but there's appropriateness in information that you share and when you share it. And so obviously that would play into it. But if there was actual client confidentiality and I was trying to be forced under oath to share that, I couldn't and wouldn't. And that's the difference. So
Right, but-
just because I don't have to doesn't mean I'm splitting hairs here. I don't want to get too deep into the woods on confidentiality, but yeah, obviously there's going to be common sense that plays into that and those things. But again, in 10 years, it might be 3 other people. So I can't speak for that person.
I can't either. So I'd prefer to leave it as is.
Okay.
Before Jared runs away,
I was just about to.
She could sense it.
Council President Cheatham asked me a question, and I would like Jared to be here to answer it. Our handbook is written through collaboration with department heads, feedback from some employees, looking at what other people are doing around the state. It vets through legal, it's presented to council, and then if approved, it is adopted. I do not run our handbook through ICRIM. Rick, you got a follow-up question there?
Well, I just wonder if, because they are our insurer, if they shouldn't have an opportunity to see if they see something that we haven't, that at a state level, there may be an issue that comes up that we don't know about yet, that may be filtering down, that we ought to consider in this handbook.
I think that, and I might be speaking out of turn, but as a board member for ICRIMP, I don't think they have time or the personnel to go through 200 cities personnel handbook, 40 counties personal handbook, I don't know, 300 special district and 300 plus school districts handbooks. I don't think they have the time to do that. And I think that if they see something coming from the state, that they try to inform cities and counties and their membership of concerns that may be coming down the pipe. But that's, I don't think they're really interested. If you have a handbook, they're going to help defend that handbook.
You can run away now.
Thank you. I'll be not far away.
I know.
I don't know why you're leaving the table.
This is going way worse than I'd anticipated. So we added a section G. It just specifically calls out the Hatch Act, which is from 1939. This is mostly in place simply for when we apply for grants that we are already in compliance with this. It just gives us language identifying that we are in compliance with it.
On that, does that last sentence on line 236 need to be there? The reason I ask that question is there is an ongoing effort at the state level to require cities to district and identify political parties.
I don't know if it needs to be there. Quite frankly, none of you are subject to this handbook at all. It's just another way to bring clarity in case there is a question, but it could be struck and the policy would still cover what it needs.
Okay. Thank you.
A change to line 255. Currently, an employee can get a hold of HR and get a copy of their personnel file or pieces of their personnel file. We would like that just to run through the records request system that the clerk manages. That way we can show that we responded in a timely manner and that they did get the material. It's just to make everything the same process. Unsuccessful.
Well, hurry.
I know, I'm trying.
There's a question coming up. If
I
yep,
know.
you
I gotta
messed
scroll
it up. We got a
faster.
question here.
So with the personnel information, the records, the information's being given to them up front, right? And so what we're talking about is if they want a copy down the road, like you got this paperwork in August, now you misplaced it, it's December, now you have to go through the process.
Yeah, well, it's usually, can I get my 20 years of performance evaluations? We have to break down the file, we have to make copies of everything, we have to send it over. If it's, hey, I turned in my insurance form, can you make me a copy of it? We do that immediately in hand.
Okay.
This is for a bigger than I misplaced a piece. A lot of employees request their whole personnel file, and some people have personnel files that are this thick because they've been here for 25 years. It's just, we need to document that we're giving them copies so that they can't say, well, I never received it. We did, and Connie has a record of that for us because she's got a handy little system we can do electronically now. It's just standardizing the process.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you skip ahead to line 379, currently I have an exception in place that we're operating under, that I put in place during COVID. When they set up our finance system, they set everything up to 3 decimal places, including pay. We've corrected everything except for vacation accruals. We would like to continue paying at 2 decimal places and not 3. It's easier for us to manage in the system, and it transfers to our other software we use that addresses accruals. We rounded everything up. This is already in place for the police union, which spells it out in their CBA. It's just adopting the exception I have in place for easier processing. And we need things like this cleaned up for the new finance system.
Mr. Mayor.
Council President Cheatham.
While we're on that page, line 374, I think, has an editing error. While on of, leave of, I think the of should be deleted.
I will take care of that,
Minor,
Rick.
minor.
Same thing for our sick leave. We would like to take that down to the 2 decimal places instead of the 3. All right. Page 18 has the bereavement policy, which is going to be before you at the next council meeting for adoption. This full policy is included with the form, and it explains who it is applicable to. Again, this policy is applicable to all city employees. And then I would like to do some renaming. It's housekeeping, but it is confusing. Currently, exempt employees receive what we call admin time. But if someone is out on pay for like a police investigation or because we're working through an internal problem, they're also on admin leave. So I have like 4 types of leave, all called the same thing. I'm looking for permission to change the current admin leave to salaried leave, which is for exempt employees and granted at the first of every year. And then I would like to actually set up what is truly administrative leave for situations and when basically someone is off work with full pay and benefits. This would be for an investigation. This could be working through an ADA situation, items like those.
Councilmember Mangum.
I apologize. I need to backtrack to the bereavement.
Okay.
We specifically say domestic partners covered by city medical plan. What
Correct.
if there's a domestic partner who is not covered by the city?
We have to have some sort of tracking mechanism, and so to be a spouse, we have a legal document that tells us that. But domestic partnership, we need some way of knowing that, so that's why we've delineated to the medical plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Does adding that line, 598 line, number 8, does that add time off or paid leave to the current plan? Are there any financial, I
There
guess?
is no changes to what we're currently doing other than updating the name.
Okay, thank you.
There's no additional cost incurred. Currently, clothing allowance. If you leave prior to the end of the fiscal year, we prorate like the $130 you got. So on your last paycheck, you owe the city back $1,250. I would like to eliminate that. Once we pay the allowance, I don't want there to be a recovery on it. You know, I'm not going to ask you back for a quarter of your boot or a pant leg. It's de minimis for us to be recovering that. It costs us more to calculate and pull that out of their check than we're actually returning back into our budgets.
Line 706. New eligible employees will receive clothing allowance for the current fiscal year if hired on or before September 1st.
Yes.
Therefore, they're eligible for full clothing allowance benefits. So if I'm hired the 15th of August,
You get a full clothing allowance for
And you
fiscal
get it
year
again.
23, and then you'll get it again at the start of 24.
that seems excessive. I don't understand why we deleted the proration.
Because again, we're talking less than $200 a person. We have to calculate. It has to be manually entered into the system. It has to be manually put on their check. We're trying to streamline our payroll processes to make the processing, because we have a very tight window for payroll processing. We're trying to make things easier, faster, and more clear to the employees. It doesn't matter if you start August 15th, you still have, and you're working in the street department, you still have to have work boots, you still have to have the appropriate clothing. Your costs as an employee are not minimized because of your start date. Those costs still exist.
How many employees are covered by this?
How many employees receive a clothing allowance?
Yes.
I don't have that count off the top of my head.
Rough guess?
Half? And that's half of non-police and fire. Almost everyone in public works, for example.
You look at like your public works, and that's who you're talking about.
Parks.
Streets, some parks,
So parks, yeah.
and then, but mostly streets, WPC, water, sanitation.
I talked with department heads prior to this, and they all felt they could absorb this within their operating budgets, because when we have a vacant position and we fill a position, there's always a gap. They don't start immediately, so there is flex a little bit in their budgets to help cover this. The cost is going to be small. All right, the next big change starts on line 770. I have stolen this from the city of Boise. They have a very long policy on EAP. The reason we're putting in a much broader scope of what EAP is and how it can be utilized is part of the new discipline policy. And currently, we can refer employees over to the EAP program. We have no access to what those conversations entail. Let's cover that. It's just a way for us to say, we can reference you over. It is private and confidential, and you can't use it as an excuse of, well, I went, but it didn't work, so I'm not accountable for it. The next big change is on lines 1201 for holiday pay. This is the current practice, and I'm just adopting it in policy. Holiday can be paid on the holiday itself or the day the holiday is observed. Those things do not always match. If Christmas happens on a Sunday, we would observe on a Monday. If you're called out on the 25th and the 26th, you only get holiday pay for one of those. You don't get a double dip. All right. This is a whole new item I'm bringing before council. I know it's horrible to read. Basically, what this is what's called step up in the unions. Currently, if you're an employee and you take over the majority of the tasks for a coworker who's at a higher pay grade than you receive no increase to your pay. That's just a temporary assignment you're given. I would like to implement a temporary assignment for employees not covered by collective bargaining. It would only kick into place if the person was gone more than 30 days. So we're not doing it day of or for the majority of the work week. We're saying 30 days. And they have to take on the majority of the tasks. They can't take on one or two items that the position does. HR, for example, has massive holes in our staffing. Terry has taken over like VIBA and for your wellness thing and gym memberships. She didn't take over the majority of the duties, so she wouldn't be compensated at that higher rate of pay. But if she had taken over the majority of one of the vacant positions we have, she would then be compensated after 30 days. It would be considered a temporary assignment. If it's more than 6 months and these things do occur, then they would probably be put in at an interim status and actually change their title. Otherwise, they would remain at their old title with those new duties and that temporary pay.
Does the department head make the decision whether that is a majority of the job then?
I think they would work with us and legal when we sat down and looked at duties. The majority of duties are not passed off wholly. Most of them are parsed out. You take a piece, you take a piece. But some things they have to step in and take over a whole role. In those situations, hopefully there would be salary savings if there's a vacancy. Otherwise, if you had someone out like for 12 weeks on FMLA and they took over duties, the department would have to flex within their budget to find that addition in pay within their current budget existing. All right, so we have talked about the demotion pay and a step movement, and that will be on the next agenda. However, I have added some language to introductory periods. The mayor and I sat down and talked about this. We felt this was an area we could beef up what we're currently doing and just explain it a little bit better in policy. If you are on an introductory period, you are at will and you can be released. We do work through ICRIMP and per our standard practices on that. I know people still call this a probationary period. Introductory period is a much better term for it because it's about fit. It's not that they're being punished and you're watching them. It's about making sure you're training them adequately and they have the right resources and they're understanding the scope of their position. Extension of the probationary period, introductory period did not change. We just added the language of how an employee can be removed from an introductory period.
Yep, we got it. Josh?
Do all employees serve an introductory period?
They do, and it depends on the type of position or what is defined within their collective bargaining.
Before we go too far away from that, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
back to 1513. It says or pay increase. Does that include annual increases such as we go through? Does that mean that an employee who has had a demotion cannot receive the same pay increase that the rest of the city receives?
So currently, if you demote, you would receive like the table adjustment, but you would not receive a step movement. The new policy going before you next week will eliminate that, and everyone would receive the step movement.
Okay.
Okay. On line 1711, I'm looking for guidance if council would or would not like to add actual language on relocation and moving expenses. This is something we pay very, very limited. However, we do not have good policy that gives us clear guidance on what we should and should not do. And that's what I'm trying to document here is if we are going to pay this in a very limited circumstance, I need some guide rails to make sure that we're paying it fairly every time we do pay it and that council understands how that works.
Yes.
So this proposed reimbursement for moving expenses, would they be optional and be able to be like negotiated as part of a package?
So currently we're only paying it for really high-level employees. You're talking about department heads, and that's where I delineated on line 1721. This would be executive staff who are a direct report to the mayor and are above a pay grade 16, a police chief or a fire chief. So these are department heads that you're usually doing a nationwide search on. These aren't usually local recruits. So we do have more situations where they are moving cross-country or at least within states. This is something that's negotiated as part of their onboarding, their offer letter, but we do need guidelines on what we should and should not be offering so we can have limits. And it becomes much easier. This keeps us in full compliance with IRS. There are certain things that have to be listed as taxable income. This gives us deadlines so that they have to follow a standardized process. We talk about receipts and all of that is included here. This is another one I stole from the city of Boise.
Okay, I've got Corey and then Josh.
No, just,
Oh, just
I'm out.
Josh.
I'm good.
Nope, never mind.
well, I
I
do.
got Rick.
Line 1752, it talks about actual moving expenses. What I'm wondering is, are the expenses we're talking about here normally included within departmental budgets, or is this kind of a supplemental that we have to figure out where to get the money to cover?
So this is something we would be absorbing through salary savings for the position being vacant. This is one of the few items in the handbook that would be covered by salary savings, and we would get mayoral permission with that as we did it.
How often does this come up?
Twice in 7 years.
That's what I thought.
It's limited,
Yeah, very
but it makes
limited.
it a lot easier for us to have a starting point than try to negotiate it from scratch.
Okay,
That was my question.
okay.
All right, we would like to, currently we comply with Idaho whistleblower laws. We would just like to make sure that that policy is clearly identified in the handbook so employees have easy access to it. Under the safety footwear program, when this policy comes before you, Andrea has worked hard on getting that policy updated. The actual list of who's included, that will be included as an attachment. HR is asking for department heads to have authorization to replace boots for circumstances that go above and beyond normal wear and tear. The department head could make the call to replace those boots. I'm going to give you an example. So if you're a sanitation operator and you get out at the dump, which they do every day, and their boots just slowly get broken down over time, that is not something we're going to replace boots on. That's part of the daily activities that they do. A couple years ago, there was an acid spill through town. We had employees outside of hazmat out working on that. We destroyed a lot of boots and clothes that day. We would like the department head to have the ability to replace those boots for those very extreme situations where it is through no fault of the employee and outside of their daily tasks. We would like to reimburse them for the cost of their boots so that they can have safe footwear. Department heads across the board were pretty supportive of this. All of them have suffered through this presentation at least twice. And then there is new language, risk is considering for at-fault accidents. I think Andrea's here, or we can get Andrea here if you have questions on lines 2351 through 2363. And then Chris Sorensen has submitted some changes in IT policy. Most of these are de minimis. They're just matching current records retention or update in like our email server size. He will be available in September if you have specific questions. I don't think this is one you're going to have a lot on. And then there are no changes to fleet and vehicle or procurement, nor are there changes to media relations and social media. So the next things you will see is a change in employee discipline and finance policies in September.
On line 2518, again, I think there's an editing error. I think that exception to should be exception of.
I will let Chris know.
Okay. Any other questions, council? Okay, Brent?
I'd like to follow up on a couple of questions that Rick had. So overall on these changes, is there any financial impact to the city?
Ones that have financial impact, we did discuss the boot, moving expenses, and then there could be a cost for the boot replacement. Again, departments would find that within operating. The return of the clothing allowance is going to be de minimis, but there is a small financial impact. Those are the ones that have the financial impact. The biggest one, and I don't know how to tell you cost right now, would be the temporary assignments. So any step up of over 30 days that would incur, the departments would have to find that within operating. I don't have a way to tell you what that would cost right now.
Okay, thank you.
Any others? Okay, thank you. We'll move to agenda item number 6, is Idaho Transportation Department ITD Local Transportation Grant Program application for Highline expansion. Staff members from the Engineering Department and Planning Development Services Department will be in attendance to discuss the opportunity to apply for an ITD Local Transportation Grant for the expansion of Highline Road from Flandreau to Pocatello Creek Road.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the City Council. Christine Howe, Grants Manager for the Planning and Development Services Department.
Becky Robinson, I'm the Public Works Project Manager.
So today we want to bring forward two grant applications we're working on. The first being the ITD Local Strategic Initiatives Grant. The state announced this funding opportunity about a month ago or so. And so they are providing funding to the 6 identified metropolitan areas in the state to apply for up to $10 million for projects that are direct impacts from a state highway project or economically infeasible. Because it's such a large amount of funding that suddenly became available, we thought it'd be a great opportunity to identify a priority project that would fit within that scope. And so after some internal staff discussions and discussions with the Bannock County Transportation Office, we identified the Highline Road expansion as our top priority for this funding. And so the maximum grant award that they're allowing through ITD is a $10 million award. Our current project cost estimates are about $12.3 million. We did speak with the state about that and if that would be a detriment to our application. And they seemed to indicate that if you were to apply for the full 10 million, and they awarded that, then it would be a direct check to the city. They could potentially award smaller amounts, and if that was the case, then we could do a scope adjustment. But because we're currently over the 10 million that's being offered through this program, we wanted to bring it before the council to answer any questions about the project and its feasibility, specifically because of that funding ask. It looks like we have about $1 million in reserves that we could contribute toward the overage. So we'd be looking for another 1.3 million to do the full expansion of the Highline Road. So,
Councilmember
Right.
Mangum?
Has a traffic study been conducted on that road?
I don't believe we've done a formal traffic study. We've done a lot of study at the Jefferson-Pocatello Creek intersection in more recent history, and we do have traffic data that shows the time delays from the detour route as a result of the highway project. But Chubbuck expanded their end of Highline about 10 years ago, and so this would create up to 5 lanes where possible with a turning lane at the critical intersections and allow for the handling of that volume of daily traffic that we're seeing. Traffic has increased over time, and it's gotten especially bad with the detour route. So.
Maury at BTPO did do an unsignalized intersection study, which both the intersections of El Rancho and Highline and Flandreau and Highline were both included in that study. The intersection of Flandreau and Highline already meets the criteria for needing a traffic signal, and the intersection of El Rancho, Pearl, and Highline meets the criteria for a traffic signal by 2040. Also, did you know your name tags are flipped?
Really bothersome to her, apparently. So.
Thank you.
They're twins.
No wonder I get them confused.
That makes sense.
That's your excuse, huh?
I'm going with it. That's my story. Questions, Rick?
If we're awarded this, is there a timetable developed as to when this is going to happen? Surely we aren't going to try and do this while we've got all this mess going on the interstate.
We would. So they're looking for basically shovel-ready projects. They'd like to award in late September with early October first, handing the funds over and have them shovel-ready within 6 months. So we'd complete design within that 6 months.
So we complete design, but when would the construction begin?
Ideally, I think next spring would be their timeline based on what we've heard. But this is a rare opportunity because they would just cut a check to the city for the project. So typically we go through the state and have a match, or we have to go through federal funding and often have a match and go on a reimbursement basis, but this would be direct funds to the city.
To follow up, is there a way to make this a $10 million project?
We've thought about that and looked at some areas for cost savings and would certainly work toward that. Under the planning and design, we could potentially do design build, which would possibly reduce that slightly. We've also looked at adjusting some of the sidewalk numbers, so putting sidewalk perhaps on just the west side. But these are cost estimates. We used Chubbuck's costs that they incurred for their portion of the expansion, and there's a bit of unknown there with the box culvert encasement and the retaining wall. So we've thought about areas where we could reduce, but are pretty comfortable with these numbers and would be hesitant to reduce them down to try to hit the 10 million just because of some of the unknowns there.
Is there a timetable developed yet for construction? How long it's going to take and?
Yep, so construction would be completed in the winter of 2025, based on our preliminary project schedule.
Thank you.
Yes, Mangum.
So if awarded, is there a time frame on when we have to have the project done or have to initiate the project, or can we wait until this mess on the highway is done?
I'm not sure on that. We could discuss with the state, but I think they want shovel ready.
They really want this money to go to projects that have been impacted by a state project and to minimize the impact of the state projects. And so Highline is one of the detour routes for the road at Chubbuck or the bridge at Chubbuck Road in particular. So that's one of their main goals with this project, is to minimize the impact of a state project on our system. And so widening Highline minimizes that impact. So that's the direct criteria of their application.
Are they going to do something with the canal then on Highline? Is it going to get covered? Is that part of this project to widen it out?
Yes, it would go into a box culvert the way that the section in Chubbuck Road did. And Fort Hall Irrigation has expressed their support for that and their willingness to include that and support us in that. It's a 6 foot by 7 foot box culvert is what Chubbuck used. So it would be the same for this project.
And I think the interstate stuff, if we do this, I mean, they're doing that in phases. So hopefully before we start this, I can get some of the phases done that quit pushing the traffic into town the way it goes.
If you look at that, you've got some pretty dangerous parts on Highline between Jefferson and Pearl Street.
That road's always been,
some
that's
pretty dangerous
not a good
spots.
road. Never been a good road, ever, for pedestrians or vehicle traffic. So.
Yeah. Councilmember Mangum.
So we're short roughly 2.3 million. Has there been any research for grants that might be able to absorb that?
Not specifically for this project. I think with the short timeline, it'd be unlikely that we could find a grant to fill that gap and be ready for, obviously, the application and use. We could look during the construction. As mentioned, we think we can cover about $1 million of the overage with reserves, but we would need separate appropriations to cover the remaining 1.3 million.
One of the unknowns with this money is that because it's not federal money, we don't have to do Davis-Bacon wages. It's a check that the state cuts to us, and our estimate is based on primarily Chubbuck's section of this project, which did use Davis-Bacon, so that may reduce the cost, but we really don't have a way to know that until we bid it.
Mangum.
So with this, are you looking for direction on go for it or don't go for it, or where are we at?
Yeah, because there's a budget ask included in this, we wanted to bring it before you to respond to any questions before bringing it to next week's council meeting.
And so there's a chance that we won't get it, right? So, I mean, we just apply, we might not get it, we may get it.
Applying here.
Yeah, that's true. You're the GOAT when it comes to applying for grants. But yeah, I'm in favor of it.
Yeah,
It's needed.
go for it.
Okay. Anything else?
No, but we are the next item as well. So.
I know that, I see that, so
Right.
do you want to just roll into that? Agenda item 7, U.S. Department of Transportation DOT grant for Center Street Underpass Stormwater Resilience.
Yes. So this grant application, after council supported use of the ARPA funds for stormwater projects up to $1 million, we had seen this grant opportunity to apply for. And so what this would do is essentially offset and expand the Center Street Underpass Stormwater Project. And so we've put together this application for US DOT to install a essentially 30-inch concrete line at the existing Center Street Underpass so that we can divert that overflow to the Halliday connection down First Ave. And so the total project cost for this is just over $2 million. And again, that's because we're including things such as the construction of a bioswale down the entirety of First Ave and some additional amenities there at the project site. This project does require a 20% match. And so we're recommending that $406,147 of the stormwater, the ARPA funding designated for stormwater be attributed toward this grant. And if we're successful in this application, that would free up about $600,000 from that ARPA funding that we could use toward Constitution Park. If we're not successful, then all of the ARPA funds for stormwater would go toward this Center Street Underpass project, and we would do cost reductions to make sure it's under that $1 million. So we wouldn't be able to get the full suite of items that we have included in this grant application, but would still be able to complete that project. It was a little confusing in terms of pairing the funding and ARPA and our conversations about stormwater for those projects. So we wanted to bring it forward to respond to any questions in advance of next week's council meeting.
Rick?
Would this require closing the the underpass?
There would be a minor detour, but we would not have to close it during the construction entirely.
For how long?
Construction phase on this, I think 6 to 8 weeks.
It's a gravity stormline, so, and it would go along South First, and so the impact to the Center Street underpass should be minimal.
That's a major thoroughfare and support for our downtown. I would hate to see it closed.
And that's part of the purpose of the application, is so that we can prevent it from flooding and closing during the stormwater events. I think that'd be a great quote for the application, because it does ask about economic impact and also the safety impacts, so.
The flooding events usually are a day or two. If this is, a month in the middle of the summer, that's a problem for downtown. So that's my concern. Is there a construction timetable yet?
I don't believe we have an exact timetable, but I understand that the portion where you do the installation in front of the Center Street underpass, they'd work through that as quickly as possible and have that detour route, or not even need a detour route, but a reduced lane. And then we'd move to the additional areas down First Ave. So you wouldn't necessarily have the impact on the traffic as you install the line all the way.
Will we need Union Pacific Railroad permission to do this work under the railroad area?
No, I think we have.
We have the right-of-way there, and we are in communication with the railroad about getting a letter of support from them. This beautifies and reduces impact on their property as well, because the bioswale would, collect theoretically stormwater running off of their property as well. And so we are working with the railroad on this application.
But they haven't given permission.
So in order to get the permission, what we've done with the Center Street underpass is there's a extensive application and $1,000 fee. So we haven't started any of those applications for their permission. We'll see if we get the grant before we do the official applications for their approvals. But the letter of support that they'll provide has indicated that they will work with us on that section of the property on South First that butts up against the railroad property.
My concern is it typically takes years to get those letters from the railroad. They move it even slower than the speed of government to get things done. And that concerns me, that we get this all lined out to go, and then it takes, similar to what's happened at Chubbuck on their extension from their new road they built, and they still haven't been able to get the railroad permission to expand that to a 4-lane road. And it's been years ago.
I'm not confident Chubbuck started working with them until they started building the road though either, so.
Even then, it's years ago and they still don't have it done. So that's part of my
All of our, yes, please. All of our, everything will be within our right-of-way. And so we just need their letter of support that it looks better on the application to the federal DOT. Go ahead, Tom.
Tom Kirkman, Deputy Public Works Director. The bioswale that's going to run down First Street is on actually our side of the fence. It was part of the Terry First project that we're trying to put in with this. So the Union Pacific's involvement would be very minimal. All of this work will be done on our side of the fence for the most part. An answer to your question, hopefully, is we would probably start at the high side of this. It's a gravity line. So we would start at the intersection of Clark and First, and it's a gravity feed line, a 30-inch, which is typically a pretty quick trench. So you're probably looking at a 2, maybe 3-week closure. And we would have detours available to go up and over the Benton Street. We have a pretty good detour built for times when we have to do maintenance on the underpass. So I think it would be, in the grand scheme of things, a fairly minimal impact to downtown.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got Josh and then Scott.
My question was answered.
Nope, I don't have Josh anymore. I got Scott.
Same thing. That's, I just wanted to know that. And number 2, who would do it? Will you do it or will we?
We would prefer to
Contract it
just
out.
contract this out, yeah. I think that would be a better option.
Okay.
Then we can keep doing what we're supposed to do.
Got ya.
One thing I would like to say is, like, Christina, Becky are amazing. Also our engineering team. We were looking at potentially putting a lift station and pumping this water, and they got their heads together and found a way to gravity feed this. So this is a huge win for Pocatello, this project, in my opinion.
Super. Oh, Corey.
When does the application have to be submitted by?
August 18th.
Oh,
Better start writing.
So at least not the night of the council meeting next
Yeah,
week.
we've. Right. Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move to agenda item 8, Idaho Humanities Council Gym State Grant. Staff members from the Planning and Development Services Department and community partner representatives will present information regarding the opportunity to apply for a $10,000 grant through the Gym State Grant. If awarded, this grant would be used to prepare and plan a documentary on the Triangle Historic Neighborhood.
Good morning, Mayor Blad, members of the council. Jim Anglesey, Long Range Planner for the city of Pocatello. And we're approaching you to answer any questions and get feedback on applying for the Gem State Grant. As said, we're looking for $10,000 to plan a documentary regarding the Triangle Historic District. And this would just be the planning, so the creation of said documentary wouldn't be included in this grant, but this would pay for to pay a project manager, historian, and a videographer to work together to create an outline or a script for a documentary to build on what's already been created, the Triangle History book, as well as what the neighborhood has been doing to celebrate that history through the Triangle Legacy Festival. We have approached Ken Monroe from the NAACP, as well as the Bonneville neighborhood, and the committee that oversees the Lasting Legacy Festival, and they are supportive of this to bring out that history. In the long run, as far as planning goes, we would utilize these historical resources in furthering downtown development and improving the neighborhood in and around the Triangle, and using that to be sensitive to its history, and building in or attracting developers that would want to celebrate that. So with that, any questions on this application?
Okay, I've got Council President Cheatham, Councilwoman Lyric, and who did you say? Councilmember Mansfield.
My sign's back. It's correct again.
it's not Mangum today.
I said Mansfield though, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
He said Councilmember Mangum wants to ask, and so you guys are messing with me. Council President Cheatham.
Is this potentially an IPTV project, much as they did Lagertown?
I'm not 100% sure. They're thinking that this would be, it could transfer to like a PBS documentary. It could be just a local historical repository, historical repository to tell the stories. Part of it is interviewing people that live there to tell their story of the Triangle. And it was made clear that we don't want to romanticize it because the neighborhood was built by necessity, and there was a lot of discriminatory issues regarding the Triangle. And so it's not so much to romanticize the history, but to tell all sides of the story. And so I don't know if that answers your question per se, but it's to help celebrate the history of the place and help further the development of that area.
I just want to throw out, I think it would make a good IPTV project based on what I've seen, some of their other stuff in the past couple of years. Once the planning is done, it would be an easy thing for them to do, to send a video crew over here, do the interviews, set all that up, and then it takes several months to get the editing and final production done. But If you haven't watched Lagertown, I'd encourage everybody to go see that. It was very well done, and I certainly don't think it romanticized that project.
Okay. We'll look into it.
Okay. Linda?
My question is kind of similar to Rick's. First of all, I think this is a great project, and I'm glad we're going to do that. I think it's an important project, and like you say, it's not about sort of romanticizing this, but kind of documenting the history and telling all sides of it, and including the negative issues that were part of that history. So I think it's important. The original book was by Kevin Marsh.
Kevin Marsh is one of the
authors. And I was just wondering about the documentary, when we would get to that point, who would be involved? And is he planning to be involved in this project?
We're still trying to, he's been out of town for the summer, and so we're still trying to contact him, but we would like him to be the main historian on this project. The Humanities Council would require a historian to be part of this project. And so we're still trying to track him down.
And with related to that, I was just wondering about ISU's involvement. Would they participate in this grant at all, or just maybe later when we actually get to making the documentary? Or
we would like to involve them to provide feedback on building a script. I'm not a script creator, but using a local videographer as well as a communications department, film studies students, it would be a really great project for them to kind of collaborate on this. And we worked that into the proposal of working with them to see if they would have interest in participating.
And maybe in a history department course, or even, like a master's student, it could be a really good project for them too.
Right.
Yeah, somebody working under Professor Marsh or something like that. Yeah. I just want to make sure that we would work closely with them on this project, but I think it's a really important thing to do, and I very much support this. So,
Mansfield.
Is there a reason why the documentary was the choice of distribution, I guess, for media, or distribution of the message? I think, and I was trying to find it in the comprehensive plan, I wasn't able to locate it quick enough, but I thought I remember the idea of putting in like physical memorializations of the Triangle neighborhood. Why are we prioritizing the documentary over something like that?
So this grant itself wouldn't help create a memorial or brick and mortar type thing.
Okay.
This is mainly directed to public engagement, and so we thought for that reason, that public engagement would be in the form of interviews or engagement of people helping create the documentary. And then the hope is that there will be other grant money available to help support development in this, whether it's like, because we've been talking about like, it'd be great if there was like a cultural center, multi-use center down there that would be kind of the epicenter of the Triangle. But we're hoping that the documentary and the other history that's been pulled in on the Triangle will help lead to something like that.
Great, thank you.
Other questions, Brent?
And there already is a smaller brick and mortar area there now, correct? That explains the
Yeah,
area?
there's a memorial
Memorial,
that kind of memorializes the Triangle.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, super. Thank you. We'll move to agenda item 9, Pocatello Sign Code Rewrite. Planning and Development Services staff members will present information and seek feedback from the council regarding the rewrite of Pocatello Sign Code.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Will Claver. I am an assistant planner for the city of Pocatello. Just a brief history of the process that we've gone through so far with this sign code update is even before I started back in 2021, we started looking at the sign code needing to be updated and be more modern. After I came along, and we started getting into our value, our vision survey and the comprehensive plan desires of the community. We decided that the previous drafts needed a little bit more updating to keep us out of potential legal troubles with some Supreme Court cases, and then also to reflect more desires of the community. We also wanted to get a little bit more input to see what the desires of the community were. So in 2022 and January 2023, we sent out a survey for the sign code, and that survey went on for 4 weeks. Within the first 2 days, we received 100 responses. 2 weeks later, we had nearly 300 responses, and by the end of the 4th week, we had just under 400 responses. So within the short time period that this was up for public input, a great deal of interest and desires and strong opinions in several different directions were discussed. Overall findings of that survey was that the majority of respondents dislike signage such as pole signs, billboards, and electronic message displays. Furthermore, temporary signage such as banners, sales, and yard signs did not receive good reviews. Respondents reported that the wall signs, light pole banners, and monument signs are the most desirable. These signs show when people have reached their desired destination rather than catch the eye of a potential customer and change their mind to bring them off the street. Overall, these findings may be interpreted to indicate that respondents want to protect the scenery of the natural and built environment and reduce signage that contributes to the visual clutter. Respondents prefer signs that do not distract from the road or blind them as they drive by. Finally, we asked the question that how they utilize signs, if it brought them to bring them to a business, or if it was or just how they decided to go frequent of business. Overall, respondents agreed that they visited a business based on word of mouth, online platforms, and some other tools. However, respondents agreed that signs did play a role in playing, but it wasn't their biggest role, and it was the only category where most of the respondents said that that they disagreed or strongly disagreed on that's the form of advertisement that brought them to the business. After this this survey came out and we were able to analyze it, we brought this forward before you in February 2023. And then after receiving some feedback from all of you, we undertook this effort to take into all considerations, and then also to balance the needs and desires of the businesses, but also the needs and desires of the community at large. Furthermore, this effort was to make regulations more clear. Our current regulations are difficult to find. After a year of looking in it, I find something new every day that I look into it. And so it's a very difficult. And so the effort was really to, if it was someone off the street or an experienced sign contractor, that way everybody knew what they were, and to provide different options and visuals saying these are different types of signs that you may want to consider for your businesses. If you like to, I could go through some of the highlights of the major changes that I provided to you, or I could answer questions, or just however the council feels.
Councilmember Nichols has a question.
Yes.
So in your bullet point list, you have item number 4, prohibited signs. Signs on property with no established use and off-premises or billboard signs. Could you explain what those are and whether they are currently allowed?
Yep, both signs are currently allowed in our zones. There's some restrictions off of on off-premise or billboard signs. They're relatively weak restrictions. However, if we kept the same restrictions that we do have now, several spots in the city, there's not that many spots in the city left. However, that doesn't protect the outskirts of the city. So on the outskirts of the city, there could be potential spot spaces and for expansion. Signs on property with no established use is if there's, let me backtrack. Off-premise signs and billboard signs, and then signs with on a property with no established use could be interpreted as the same. But we wanted to include both of those because they're slightly different. The signs on a property with no established use is there's just nothing there. There's no building, there's nothing there. So it's just purely a pole and a sign or a monument, just a sign that has nothing else involved with it. Off-premise or billboard signs are, even if there's a property with a use established there, it's for the signs indicating for somewhere that's not on that premise or on that property, but it's at a different location. And billboard signs is just another name for that as well.
Okay, so off-premises sign is, you've got a piece of property, you put up a sign and it says 500 feet to another business.
Yep.
That's what they're referring to?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Linda?
I was just wondering if you could repeat what the more popular, you said monument signs and you said a couple of others, something to do with lighted.
Yeah. Wall signs, light pole banners. So banners that go onto like light poles or just a pole that just hang out.
Okay.
Kind of like the more decorative Bengal ISU signs on the light poles. Those are what people really enjoyed.
And does that include neon signs as well, or was that not a popular?
I did not ask about neon signs. The reason being is there's already a neon focus in the downtown to revitalize those and relight the night. So we figured that was already a popular trend that wanted to be kept going forward. So we didn't ask on that regard.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Go ahead and give us some highlights unless you have any other questions, Council. Council President Cheatham.
I have several sections I'd like to talk about. One is number 6, licenses. What kinds of signs would require to be licensed?
All signs, so currently, right now, how the current practice is all signs that require a permit need to have a licensed contractor. This proposal is to only signs, let me rephrase. Signs that are painted or on windows will not require a license, but all signs that are going up, such as wall signs, monument signs, pole signs, banner signs, those would have to have a licensed contractor.
Under this section, how would a revocation occur? What would lead to that?
Yeah, so for instance, if a sign contractor is either not pulling permits consistently, and then we have to do several code enforcement cases, then they would potentially get their license revoked. But then also if they submitted...
They're licensed for that sign, or they're licensed to do business?
They're licensed with the city of Pocatello. So currently they're required to have insurance and license with the city of Pocatello, and they would hold that liability for those signs.
So they have a license, they're just not following the rules and regulations. This is a way to
Right.
get their attention to follow rules and regulations.
Yeah, and currently it would be, this process is in place, but it would go all the way to the city council to remove it. We wanted to follow more of a similar pattern of daycare licenses with police department, where they can revoke it, and then the license holder appeal it, they would go to you. That's the process that we're proposing.
Gives them a due process.
Yeah.
Would they be out of business during the revocation, after the revocation order until the appeal?
They would not be able to pull any more sign permits, that's correct.
Within the city.
That's right, within the city.
On item 8A, could you explain what a full cutoff is?
Yeah, full cutoff is where you can't see the light at all. It's fully shielded. Full cutoff is, let's say, here's the light bulb. The light would go here and it would be fully here. And so that way the light bulb's fully encased.
So it's indirectly illuminated?
Yes.
Okay. On item C, the illumination hours, I thought our ordinance read it ended at 10 p.m. on illuminated billboards instead of 11. Is this, I guess what I'm asking, is this different than the current ordinance?
It is different than the current ordinance right now. This sign lighting is for all signs in general, not just electronic message displays. Electronic message displays would have that same cutoff at, I believe, 10. I don't think I changed that, but I would have to look into it.
Okay. On 10B,
Okay.
This lineal street frontage area, could you give me an example of where that would be? And what I'm thinking is what happened on Alameda Road, that row of buildings there. We had a little problem with when those were renovated and redone. There was a problem with the signage that was permitted there. Would this ordinance have taken care of that issue?
So the lineal foot is along the property. So if they have 300 feet wide along the property right of way, then they can apply for a master sign permit.
But there were 3 individual businesses there.
Yep. Well, even one, if it has 300 feet or more, if they have those, they can apply for a master sign plan.
What do the other 2 do?
Pardon?
What do the other 2 businesses do?
They would have to be in agreement. They would have to sign on.
Agree to the sign of the one business?
Sorry, might be not misunderstanding. So if there's 3 businesses there and each have 100 feet of frontage, they would only be able to apply for a master sign permit, plan permit for the multi-tenant use and for the full 300 feet. And so if they didn't have that 300 feet, then they couldn't do it.
But how from the exterior do you determine the interior use of a space?
It's not business. It's of lineal feet of property.
But there might be 3 businesses in one building, all renting.
Right, and so we don't take into consideration the internal of that. It's the property as a whole. If they are, currently how we do it is if an individual tenant of a property does it, they are allowed 1.5 times the business frontage. So whatever the wall is that the door is, the main primary entrance to that business, whatever wall is that business takes up is called their business frontage, and we take 1.5 times that. And so this creation of master sign permit for multi-tenants is for new tenants or those that want to utilize some of the advantages of the multi-tenant. The advantages are creating a little bit more square footage for their sign permits, and potentially if they have more than 4 signs, then it would be a reduced rate for them as well. And so this master sign permit is supposed to help us get to understand more of review it as a whole rather than individual tenants at one time. If one tenant wants to do it that's currently existing, They would just follow the normal regulations of their wall signs.
Okay,
Number 12.
okay, go ahead.
Can I ask a follow-up
Yeah,
on
I'd like to
that?
follow up as well.
That,
Go ahead.
or that part of it? So if I'm understanding this correct, the three of us are part of a multi-tenant business rental, right? We each have 100 square footage. I can have a sign up for my business, but if we want to do a master site plan, a master sign plan, that gives us the additional perks of the 10%, et cetera, but all three of us have to be in agreement to get that plan with the new type of permit, correct?
Correct.
Got it, okay.
Okay, and then we have another follow-up from Nichols, and then you got a follow-up. Okay.
Okay, so we have must have 300 feet of lineal street frontage. That's a city block, right?
Yeah, that's a downtown city block.
Right, downtown city block. So let's say you have a building with three tenants in it, and they have 100 feet of frontage. Does that mean they cannot have a multi-tenant master sign?
So three, would that add up to 300?
No, just one building, three tenants, 100 lineal feet of frontage on a road. Does that
No.
mean they cannot have a,
Because there's multiple tenants in there, the 300 foot would not be applicable. The multi-tenant, if there's multiple tenants in there, they can still do a master sign permit, as is. If they want to, if one business wants to take advantage of the master sign permit, they would have to have at least 300 square foot. Or 300 lineal foot.
So if you have three businesses, like Josh was saying, just as a follow-up, I wanted some clarification. Josh was talking about, but they only have between all three, 150 feet.
right?
They don't, total, they don't have to, it doesn't fall into this 300 foot.
That's correct. It's multiple tenants or 300 feet if you're one master sign permit. Or one tenant.
Okay, all right.
So,
Did that answer your?
so my follow-up was off of what Josh was saying, those others, us three have the business, 100 each. I can put up a sign, he can put up a sign, he can put up a sign. Correct?
Sorry, repeat that question.
So yeah, all three of us, we each have a business, 100 feet, 100 feet, 100 feet. I get a sign, he gets a sign. We're like Oprah, everybody gets a sign.
Right.
Is that how that works, or like we have to kind of?
Yeah, so you can, by your individual selves, you can put up your own sign. If you wanted a little bit extra or more advantageous of a little bit larger of a sign, or you wanted multiple electronic message displays or whatever it is that the advantages of the master sign plan gives, and then you'd all have to agree and then submit the signs. And then once those signs are approved, then it's just face changes off that.
Okay.
This really only applies if I want a larger sign, not my individual sign.
Correct.
So-
This is kind of a way to get people to coordinate with each other and to work with one another, and then that way they can. It's incentives for them to coordinate and have these signs to work well with one another rather than person.
Instead of 350-inch signs, we got one.
Right, declutter.
Okay.
I have another follow-up. So, three of us have this business, or we all have our businesses. Josh goes under, right? But we've got this master sign. How does that next person who comes in how does that person, what do we do there?
They would do a face change permit, and as part of this rewrite, we would not regulate or require a permit for a face change. So as long as they're in the same dimensions, then they'd be okay to pull that permit, or not pull that permit, but put up a new sign. They wouldn't have to go through the process.
Okay. Let's go back to Rick, because Linda has a complete different question. So Rick, go ahead and finish your.
I want to talk about item 12, the sign exceptions, removal from code. Why are we taking this out of code?
We are removing the sign exception out of code and pushing everything towards the variance process. The reason being is sign exception is a variance from the code and as is, and we wanted to keep the processes similar to if there was any other type of exception to the code, they would have to go through the variance process. So we're going to push them all to the variance process. So there's still an exception to the code in a sense. It's just they would have to go through the variance process rather than the sign exception.
Is there a financial difference between those two things?
I don't believe so, but I can look into that.
I'm seeing Jim say no.
No.
Thank you.
Any more?
I'm done.
Okay, Linda. We're all done, but we still have a couple of other agenda items. Linda.
I want to go back for a minute to the license issue and you know, the revocation situation. I spent a few years as liaison to the Historic Preservation Commission, and so a lot of what they looked at in terms of the certificates of appropriateness, it's the historic district downtown specifically, so not all across the city, but a lot of what they looked at were sign issues. And one thing that came up repeatedly were either property owners themselves or often representatives from sign companies coming in after the fact saying they were not aware of what the code was or what the rules were. So they had already gone ahead and done something and then found out that it wasn't approved or it wasn't correct. And so, I think none of us want to see businesses have their license revoked and go out of business. Nobody wants that. So my question is, what kind of education are we going to do to, I think it's great to write a new sign code and to clean all this up and modernize it and update it and do all those things. But if we're going to have some things in here that have very serious consequences to people's business and to property owners and their expenses and everything, how are we going to get this out to them and help them not get into a situation where their license gets revoked and they don't get to do business for a year or whatever. We may end up putting a company out of business that way. I really want to help them know what they're supposed to do and avoid the situation that I saw so often where they just said, well, we had no idea.
Okay. A couple things that came to my mind. First off, after direction from today, we will go to still public comment, and we're still in that public comment of getting feedback and moving forward with that. So they will still have that opportunity to learn the code and to ask questions and provide that comment before formal adoption goes through. The next part is it's not going to be a one and done, like you messed up, your license is revoked. We'll give them several chances, maybe 3 strikes and there's a consequence. But that way, there's still some learning going on, but we're still holding them accountable for, by the 3rd time, you probably need to understand that there's a sign code and move forward with it.
Because there were also some, let's say, bad actors who just decided it's easier to, go ahead and do what they want and then, what is it, ask for forgiveness later or, that kind of thing. And if we see people doing that repeatedly, then I think they need to understand that there are consequences, that we have these codes for a reason. So that does happen, but I also want to try and avoid it on the front end.
Right. Our goal isn't to revoke licenses. It's to educate, and then when the time comes, it's to, okay, we need to go through this process, and if you have an appeal, go to you guys. We're also trying to save you all a little bit of time hearing these type of situations.
Could we think about some kind of public forum, that we invite all the sign contractors and property owners and just sort of, debut our sign code, but all interested parties that would be affected by it have a sort of question and answer forum.
Yeah, we can
kind of thing.
definitely look into that for the part of the public comment portion. As of right now, our plan is to send it out online, and then there was talks about having an open house for it, and so that could be a good opportunity for the question and answer there as well. So we'll look into that, doing that.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Scott, Corey, Rick.
I kind of look into the same thing, and I've pounded this horse for a while, but the business license thing, if we had business licenses, this could be portion of that, right? I mean, that's something that they would look at and say, if I'm running a business here, here's what the rules are for a sign on my building or outside of it, including the businesses that put it up would have to have a business license, right? I think we miss the boat sometimes in informing business owners and the public because we don't have that. And then they go ahead and do just exactly what Linda said, and they put up the sign and think, well, I'm just going to put it up, then I'll see what happens. Then it happens, and they go, well, I didn't know. Well, you know, you should have known. So I just, it's just maybe a way of addressing it. I don't know if it's the right way, but I see that as a way of addressing a lot of things with the businesses in our community for a minimal fee, right? And I'm here to say it would benefit the city as a whole in many different ways, just as far as the information you're dragging from those businesses on what they're doing and what they have inside and who I need to contact. So that's just my little plug. Done.
You got your business license.
I try to get them in. I try to get them in here every once in a while.
I might just add though, what I like, and then I'm going to hit Corey and Rick. But what I like about this is we have very well established sign companies that don't follow the code because it's easier for them to just throw something up instead of do it. And then they go, oh, I didn't know. Well, they know. So I like this part of this. And so Corey and then Rick.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Corey's got nothing. Rick.
Well, are the problems we're having with sign companies or with business and property owners? Is there a differential between those two?
I would say both. There's a prominent sign company in eastern Idaho that just learned we had a face change permit. They've done face changes in this town
But they've
for
known it for years.
And so I would say the problem's both. Some businesses, I've done a couple code enforcements and they just didn't know. But that's also partially because some contractors will just say, we'll put this up for you. And they rely on the contractors. So it's both.
To follow up, Mr. Mayor, I think we need a public hearing before this council and a presentation. Before we enact this, we need to let the public know this is coming. I contacted the Chamber of Commerce last night when I was going through this. They're out of town, didn't even know this was coming up on our agenda, and I think that's pretty common on work sessions. We don't get the publicity and the promotion about what our calendar of events is going to be. Before we do anything on this, I think we need to have a public hearing and get some input to see if there is any fine details here that may not be as workable as we think they are, and then take action on it after that.
Well, I know that and I don't disagree with that. I know that they've reached out to a lot of the concerned parties on this and stuff. The chamber has been made aware of this. They may not have known that it was just now coming today, but they're well aware of it. We've reached out to them. I personally have reached out to them. I know Brent has. I think Will has, and so it has, but sometimes it's just a matter of getting it. But yeah, I think the town hall meeting, there will be a lot more, not town hall meeting, but the
Open
house, there'll be a lot more opportunities to get some things, but sometimes we can lead that horse to water, we just can't make it drink, and so we can do an awful lot. And you've been working on this for a year,
More, yeah.
couple years, and I know that there's been a lot of input put in. And but yeah, I agree. Worst thing in the world is a sign code, and I don't know why Will took it on. But he's a glutton for punishment. He's young. He's feeling like he's,
The initiation to the planning.
maybe that's what it is.
You're the new guy.
I feel like I'm getting tired of going through the initiations of all the new planners coming up. But
Yeah.
but you're right. We'll definitely have some of that stuff.
One of my concerns is this prohibition of signage in the future. As we take initial areas into the city, as we annex, I would hate to see that we're banning businesses from putting up proper signage in those locations that other businesses in our community are allowed to do. That's a real concern for me. And, we've got 100 acres that we're talking to the Castellamitas family about south of town. We've got many other places that are potentially going to be brought into this city and annexed in the next few years. And I would hate to see them under some kind of a prohibition that doesn't currently exist. We're not Sun Valley.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a prohibition on the business itself. It would be a prohibition on off-premise signs. So
I understand
a pole for someone else to.
Well, we're not Sun Valley, but we're also not Vegas. So
Yeah. Or don't
We're
want to
closer.
to Sun Valley than Vegas. Linda?
One sort of follow-up to the idea of a public hearing or reaching out to the public, I'm struck by the number of responses you got to the survey. That's a really high number considering what we would usually get in any situation, signs or otherwise. So that's encouraging. It sounds like, the parties who are affected by this are watching and are paying attention and are giving their feedback and their input. So I still think there needs to be, a strong focus on educating all the interested parties and maybe even a hearing. I think those are all good options. But I do think over 400 responses shows that the people affected by this are paying attention. So good work on the outreach.
Appreciate that. One, I guess I want to clarify or make, I know that off-premise signs will be a fight. We've had this discussion at the last one. Yep. Is that something we still want to take on?
See, young. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we will move to agenda item 10 is fiscal year 2024 budget discussion. Council may review the public comments and council discussion from August 3, 2023 public hearing.
We need another break.
We probably do need another break, but Josh has got to leave, and so I want to get through this one with Josh before we do that, so.
Honorable Mayor, Honorable Council, Gene Hill with Finance Department, just here to follow up from our meeting on August 3rd to see if there's any other comments after the public hearing on the budget. Any questions?
Linda?
I was just thinking about one thing that came up about the interest rates. And how we upped our estimate on that, and whether that's a sort of dangerous thing to do or a safe thing, or and I'm just looking. The credit union that I belong to is just one example because I get emails from them, but the rates are really good right now and have gone way up. So just a comment on upping that estimate, I do feel, and you said this too, but I feel pretty comfortable
I would,
with that estimate that, that we raised.
again, I would as well, because if you look at, the Fed's probably going to do one more interest hike that I'm aware of. And again, if you look at the, what they call the yield curve, it's kind of the prediction of where things are going at, and it's how they predict recessions and things like that. there's another thing called a forward yield curve. And that forward yield curve kind of projects out that it's going to be for at least 18 months. We're going to see rates maintain the same or go up or down a little bit. I don't see the Fed making any change to stimulate the economy for a while, because economy, again, like we talked about, it's rolling recession, but it's healthy. Because it's just hitting individual segments of the economy. So I'm pretty comfortable with it. And again, if you take the average that we have on deposit, it's 80 million right now. Rates are, 5%, somewhere between 4 and 5, depending on how you want to look at it. So if you just take 5 times 80, it's $4 million. We raised it to 3.1 million. So I think I'm very confident that now we're going to be able to do that in 24 months. Don't know, but I think for at least 12 months we're fine.
Yeah. So I just wanted to have you sort of repeat your thoughts on that. And the numbers you just gave show that we're still doing a fairly conservative estimate on what it could be. I mean, we're not going to the edge or to the maximum on that. So I
think it's a moderate.
Yeah.
But I'm very comfortable.
I feel comfortable, and I'm glad to hear you say that. So thank you.
Okay, other questions? Well, I'll tell you, Council, I think it's a good budget you put together. I think it speaks volumes when you have a budget like this. We've reached out. We had 2 comments. Both comments, people were answered. The questions were answered. And so I think that you've done a good job on this budget. So I know that the council had a little bit of concern about unless there are any other questions here on the budget itself. I know there were some concerns about the ordinance for elected officials' pay. Now would be the time to discuss that as a council before we close this meeting. Council President.
Mr. Mayor, I expressed some concern about that, about council pay increase versus mayoral pay increase. And I guess my question is it appropriate to separate those 2 items?
We never have. I did, after you visited with me, I did reach out to the attorney, and he said, yeah, you can absolutely separate those 2 items and stuff. You just add an ordinance there for both the mayor pay and then the council pay. And said it really isn't a problem. We just never have done that. And so if that's the desire of the council, then it's very easily done. And I'm looking at our attorney, and if I'm getting a head nod or no, then I'm right. I didn't misrepresent what he told
Mr.
me.
Mayor, in that case, I would make a motion that when we pass that ordinance, that we separate those 2 items into 2 separate ordinances.
I'll second it.
Okay. Do you need a motion on that?
It would make
Okay.
my direction very clear, yes.
Perfect. Okay, we have a motion by Council President Cheatham and a second by Councilmember Nichols to separate the 2 ordinances.
Can I just be
We can
clear
have some
on
discussion, yeah.
what exactly that means? How are we which 2 ordinances?
So right now we have if you remember, we pulled the salary, the pay off of the agenda. We had an ordinance last time. That ordinance had both the mayor pay and the council pay.
Okay.
And so what we would do is have an ordinance that just had the mayor pay and then a separate ordinance that had the council pay.
Which is how we made the motions when we talked about it. We made them separate motions, so now we would just make them separate.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear on what we were talking about.
Any other questions?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then we have a motion by Council President Cheatham and a second by Nichols. Connie, could you please call the roll?
Cheatham?
Yes.
Nichols?
Yes.
Lurick?
I'm going to say no.
Mangum?
Yes.
Mansfield?
Yes.
Marchand?
Yes.
Okay, so Jared, if you just plan 2 separate ordinances on that, then we'll go from there. Anything else, council, we need to discuss? Okay, seeing none. Then, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Gene, thank you. I think it's a great budget, and I think that it's very, very sustainable budget as well, so that's good. So we will see you next week. Thank you very much, and with that, we are adjourned.